Chapter 766. As soon as he said that, the people nearby fell silent for a moment. They all looked over with different expressions. Mu Qinghe looked serious and did not answer immediately. Instead, it was Shang Guanwan who heard the commotion and narrowed her eyes dangerously, asking deliberately, "Vice Admiral Mu, what are you talking about?" Mu Qinghe knew that she could actually hear them, but she asked deliberately. However, he still lowered his head slightly and said word by word, "Mu Hongyu and the others have not returned yet. Your Highness, should we wait here for a while and bring them back to West Hill?" Shang Guanwan widened her eyes slightly as if she was very surprised. "They're not here yet? It's been a long time. Haven't they given up?" She did not need to say the rest of the sentence. Everyone knew what she meant. The surroundings were silent. Zhu Hong could not help but argue. "Your Highness, they're in the mystic forest. They probably don't know that we're planning to go back. They didn't even hear the news. How could they rush here?" Shang Guanwan was deliberately making things difficult for them. "Oh, I was only thinking about retrieving the dancing lotus to treat my father's illness. I forgot about these things." Shang Guanwan reacted quickly and immediately defended herself. She glanced at Zhu Hong with gloomy eyes and said meaningfully, "It seems that Dragon Teeth Mountain and Xianxia Pavilion are really close. You're still thinking about them at this time." Zhu Hong straightened his back and said frankly, "Lu Yu saved the people of Dragon Teeth Mountain. We all owe her a favor. Moreover, Hongyu is also there. Naturally we are worried." Shang Guanwan choked. Before she could speak, Zhu Hong continued, "Your Highness, we beg you to release the signal immediately and summon them back. We'll leave together when they return. The Dahuang swamp is full of danger. If they stay here alone, I'm afraid." Shang Guanwan was impatient and interrupted him. "If they don't come back, are we going to let so many people wait here forever?" "Zhu Hong, I know what you're thinking, but you have to know that the big picture is more important." Zhu Hong choked. Seeing that he had nothing to say, Shang Guanwan brushed her hair behind her ear with satisfaction. "Anyway, with Qin Yi and Lei Laoxi around, nothing should happen to them. Right now, everyone is gravely injured. Many people's injuries cannot be delayed." With that, she turned around to leave. Whoosh! The sharp sound of something breaking through the air suddenly rang in his ears. Shang Guanwan turned her head in astonishment, only to see Jiang Yuqing holding a jade tube in his hand. Bang! Above the sky, a loud bang suddenly exploded. She looked up and saw a brilliant firework blooming in the night sky. Because it was nighttime, it was even more conspicuous. Even if Mu Hongyu and the others were in the mystic forest, they should be able to see it. "Rest here for 2 hours. If they don't show up in 2 hours, we'll leave immediately." Jiang Yuqing's tone was very calm, but there was no room for disobedience. Obviously, he was not discussing it with Shang Guanwan, but directly making this decision. "Yes." Mu Qinghe responded and ordered everyone to rest on the spot before setting off in 2 hours. Zhu Hong and the rest heaved a sigh of relief and started anxiously waiting for Mu Hongyu and the others to return. Other than them, there were many others who also looked in the direction of the mystic forest and waited silently. Whispers could be heard. "I wonder if they can come back in time. Compared to this, I'm more curious about Ms. Chu's situation. Do you think she's really still alive?" "This is hard to say. Anyway, I owe Ms. Chu my life. If it weren't for her, I would have died in the swamp of the mystic forest. It'd be best if she could come back. But then we have to be more polite when we see the people from Xianxia Pavilion. Actually, I think that there's a possibility. Have you forgotten that she won first place in the Wanjing competition back then? Back then she was already able to defeat so many people in the Tianling God realm. She might be able to turn danger into safety this time." "I hope so." There were many people who were saved by Chu Liyue, and most of them were the iron-blooded Black Cavalry. They naturally valued this kindness even more. They also sincerely hoped that Chu Liyue would return safely like the others. Shang Guanwan heard these words clearly. She clenched her fists and looked at Jiang Yuqing angrily. What does he mean by this? "It's only 2 hours. It'll be over soon." Jiang Yuqing didn't seem to mind her emotions and only spoke indifferently. "Many people are indebted to Chu Liyue for saving their lives. If you leave just like this, have you thought about what they will say in private?" Shang Guanwan bit her lip and swallowed the words in her throat. She turned around and didn't look at Jiang Yuqing anymore. Jiang Yuqing frowned. Shang Guanwan was scheming, but she was narrow-minded and short-sighted. She didn't look at the big picture. Didn't she know how important the Black Cavalry was to maintaining the imperial power? The Black Cavalry was like an iron plate. Anyone who kicked it forcefully would only suffer. Mu Qinghe was the deputy general of the Black Cavalry and held military power. His words were more dignified than Shangguanwan's, the third princess. This was also one of the reasons why Jiang Yuqing didn't choose to kill Mu Qinghe back then. One move could affect the whole body. Even if Mu Qinghe listened to him now, he didn't dare to underestimate Mu Qinghe and the Black Cavalry behind him. Looking at Shangguanwan's angry back, Jiang Yuqing rubbed his temples in annoyance. Back then Shangguanyu was the princess. Her position was stable and it could be said that no one could shake it. She could have been high and mighty in the imperial court and enjoyed everything. But she didn't. Jiang Yuqing had done a special investigation. Shangguanyu had put in a lot of effort for the Black Guards, both in the open and in the dark. She also took a lot of credit for taking down Dahuang Swamp. This was also why the Black Cavalry had always respected and admired her. However, she didn't deliberately publicize this. Instead, she kept a very low profile. As a result, the world only knew that it was Mu Qinghe who volunteered to be her right-hand man after achieving outstanding military achievements. But they didn't know that there was such an inside story. Shangguanwan was promoted halfway and didn't have the upper hand. If she completely offended the Black Cavalry, she might fail at the last step. If it was Shangguanyu, how could she make such a low-level mistake? Jiang Yuqing closed his eyes. That face that was as bright as the moon appeared in his mind again. Her smile was bright, gentle, and elegant. There was a trace of nobility between her eyebrows. It was as if she was high and mighty and unapproachable. Jiang Yuqing's lips curled into a faint smile, but it quickly dissipated and was gradually replaced by hatred. He didn't mind that she didn't like him. As long as she didn't like others. But she didn't do it. That face gradually disappeared. It was replaced by another face. Jiang Yuqing looked at the mystic forest. If she could come out alive this time. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from love. Chapter 767. Bang. Hearing this loud sound, Mu Hongyu and the rest, who were still waiting in the mystic forest, all looked up. Yi Ranran widened his eyes slightly. That seems to be eldest young Master Zhang's signal. Mu Hongyu didn't have a good impression of Jiang Yuqing and the rest, so she frowned. It's already so late. Shouldn't they have left long ago? Yi Ranran explained. They seem to be gathering people. Maybe they're asking us to go back? Then the two of them looked at each other. That bunch of people clearly left long ago. Why are they still gathering us now? That's where the three realms intersect. Qin Yi glanced at it and said lightly. They're probably planning to wait for you guys before leaving. However, they probably won't wait for too long. If they really wanted Mu Hongyu and the rest to leave with them from the start, they would have sent the signal long ago. Why wait until now? We're already standing on the transportation formation. It doesn't matter if it's earlier or later. They're just calling people along the way. Mu Hongyu shook her head and was unmoved. I want to wait here for Lu Yu to come out. Me too. Yi Ranran nodded firmly. Chang Wanzhou stood at the side and didn't say much. In actual fact, he didn't even look at the signal flare. From beginning to end, his attention was focused on the mother tree. Lei Laosi glanced at the gradually dissipating fireworks and chuckled. Hypocrite. They were already very clear about what kind of person Jiang Yuqing was. The remaining few people shouldn't have been able to enter his eyes. For some reason he actually did this time. However, to Lei Laosi he didn't have good intentions no matter what. If it weren't because Her Highness wanted to form a contract with the red-tailed phoenix, they definitely wouldn't have let Jiang Yuqing off so easily. And that Shangguanwan, anyway, the 9-colored heavenly pheasant had already successfully broken through to become a red-tailed phoenix, so they didn't have to wait here anymore. When Her Highness comes out, they can also leave this place together. When that time comes, they'll suffer. This summoning signal did not attract their attention. After a brief chat, they put the matter to the back of their minds and concentrated on waiting for Chu Luiyue to come out. Under Qin Yi's request, Mu Hongyu and Yi Ranran started cultivating while waiting. No one knew when Chu Luiyue would come out. It was always good to increase one's strength. As for Chang Wanzhou, after swallowing a pill he continued to stand guard. At first, Qin Yi didn't pay much attention to it and thought that the pill was for him to treat his injuries. However, he soon discovered that Chang Wanzhou's aura was growing stronger. The key was that he did not absorb the energy of heaven and earth around him to increase his strength. Instead, the energy was emitted from his body. Therefore, even if he wasn't as focused on cultivation as Mu Hongyu and Yi Ranran, his cultivation was still slowly improving. Gradually, a thin layer of frost covered Chang Wanzhou's body. Even the ground beneath his feet was covered in a layer of ice. A chilly aura was emitted from his body, but the Cloud Sky Copper Sword kept burning with a sparrow blue flame. The Cloud Sky Copper Sword contained Chu Liyue's strength, so he could use this method to sense her aura more clearly. Just like that, Chang Wanzhou waited for Chu Liyue under the two extreme forces, one cold and one hot, while increasing his strength. What's wrong with this fellow? Lei Laosi finally noticed that something was amiss and couldn't help but mumble. I've never seen someone cultivate like this. Qin Yi narrowed his eyes. There should be a cold aura in his body, and this cold aura contains a large amount of strength. As long as he dispels this cold aura, his strength will naturally increase. Lei Laosi secretly thought that his big brother's eyes were sharp and couldn't help but give him a thumbs up. Big brother, you're not a celestial physician, so how do you know this? Qin Yi smiled lightly. It's just a guess. When Chang Wanzhou heard this voice, he finally turned to look at the two of them. His gaze stopped on Qin Yi's face for a moment, and his brows, which were covered by his short blonde hair, knitted slightly as he subconsciously became alert. Other than myself, only Chu Liyue knows about my body's condition. How did he know? He said that it was a guess, but Chang Wanzhou didn't quite believe it. This guess was way too accurate. As though he saw through Chang Wanzhou's suspicion, Qin Yi raised his brows. You don't have to look at me like that. I've seen a similar example in a book before. When I saw your situation, I naturally thought of it. A shocked expression flashed across Chang Wanzhou's face. After hesitating for a moment, he finally spoke and asked hesitantly, You said, you saw a similar situation like mine in a book before? Qin Yi nodded. According to the records, that person successfully dispelled the cold aura in his body and broke through to become a top warrior. However, the process was very difficult and normal people wouldn't be able to persevere. Actually, what he didn't say was that there wasn't only one example in that book. In actual fact, there were hundreds and thousands of people who encountered such a situation. Out of so many people, only one succeeded in the end. Those who didn't all died. This meant that there should be many people like that other than Chang Wanzhou. However, Chang Wanzhou should be the only one who managed to survive. However, he clearly didn't know anything about this. Chang Wanzhou pressed his lips together. What book is that? Can I take a look? Ever since he could remember, his body had been like this. He had no parents, no relatives, and no friends. Growing up in the barren and barbaric Nanjiang, he suffered a lot. If I didn't meet that person later on, I would have died in Thousand Reed Lake. That book isn't mine, and I think it can't be found anymore. At this point, a hint of desolation flashed across Qin Yi's eyes. When Chang Wanzhou saw this, he didn't ask anymore. Instead, it was Qin Yi who suddenly asked after a moment of silence. The pill you swallowed just now should have helped you dispel this cold air, right? Chang Wanzhou nodded. Where did this pill come from? Chang Wanzhou didn't hide it. Lu Yu made it. This was within his expectations. Her Highness has also read that book, so it's normal for her to know how to make it. Qin Yi smiled faintly. You're really lucky. He actually survived it alone. Chang Wanzhou nodded seriously. My luck is really good. Everyone I met treated me well. Suddenly, an extremely faint pattern flashed across his glabella. Qin Yi was suddenly stunned. There's a seal in your body? Chang Wanzhou looked at him in shock and nodded hesitantly. Even Chu Liyue didn't know about this. That was because that seal was also covered by the cold air. Now that the cold air in his body gradually melted and dissipated, that seal gradually revealed itself. However, since that seal didn't do anything, he didn't pay much attention to it. Qin Yi was shocked as he hurriedly asked, Who left that seal for you? That seems to be digression. 6 p.m. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Web. Chapter 768. Chang Wanzhou shook his head. I don't know either. He only knew that there was a seal in his body, but he didn't know when it appeared or who set it up. Also, this seal itself was very strange. If other people had a seal in their body, It would usually be used to suppress their force. However, this wasn't the case for his seal. It even froze because of the strong yin aura. Until now, Chang Wanzhou still didn't know what the seal was used for. He had once thought of removing it, but he had tried many methods, but the seal remained unaffected. In the end, when he saw that the seal didn't move, he decided to just put this matter aside. He didn't expect Qin Yi to actually see through it. Also, he seemed to be very anxious. Disappointment flashed across Qin Yi's eyes when he heard Chang Wanzhou's reply. He walked to Chang Wanzhou and wanted to take a closer look to confirm if it was what he had guessed. However, the seal pattern had already disappeared. Seeing Qin Yi staring at his glabella, Chang Wanzhou instantly understood something. "There's something on my head?" After confirming that the seal wouldn't appear again, he sighed in his heart and nodded. "It just flashed, so I didn't see it clearly." Chang Wanzhou scrutinized his expression and asked tentatively, "What's the matter? You've seen this seal before?" Qin Yi kept quiet for a while before replying softly. "I think so, but the impression is a little blurry. Plus, I didn't see it clearly. I can't quite recall it." Chang Wanzhou was skeptical. If that seal really appeared on my glabella, Qin Yi's eyes would have been filled with shock the moment he saw it. That kind of expression definitely wasn't something that someone who couldn't recall would have. "I don't want to talk about it." "Why is that?" However, Chang Wanzhou didn't continue asking. Qin Yi looked at him with a complicated gaze before retracting his gaze. After a while he said, "As your abilities increase, that seal will definitely appear again. Just be more careful. If there are any abnormalities, inform me as soon as possible." His tone was a little solemn. Chang Wanzhou thought for a moment and gently nodded. The few people around him were a little confused by this scene and looked over one after another. Lei Laosi couldn't help but ask, "Big brother, what's wrong?" Qin Yi shook his head. "Nothing." Since he denied it like this, the others naturally couldn't continue to say anything. Lei Laosi was a little perturbed. His elder brother had always been calm and composed. Except for the time when he heard that something had happened to His Highness, he had almost never seen him so emotional. He didn't see the seal that flashed across Chang Wanzhou's head. He didn't know what it was that made his big brother lose his composure like this. After this small commotion, the group quieted down again. Only Qin Yi remained calm on the surface, but his heart was in turmoil. If he was not mistaken, His Highness shouldn't know about this yet. When he had the chance, he had to inform her as soon as possible. An hour was gone in a flash. The direction of the mystic forest was silent. Mu Hongyu and the others were still nowhere to be seen. The hope in Zhu Hong in the others' eyes gradually dimmed. It's already so late, yet they still aren't here. They definitely don't intend to leave with us. Many people at the side also revealed regretful and disappointed expressions. They originally hoped that Chu Luiwei and the others could appear together. "It's time, right?" asked Sheng Guanwan. At this point she had already calmed down. As Chu Luiwei and the others didn't come back on time, her mood was much better. This can only prove that Mu Hongyu and the others still haven't found Chu Luiwei. How can they find him? What a joke. Unless they flip the entire mystic forest upside down, there's still a slight possibility. However, by then Chu Luiwei would probably have rotted into a pile of bones. Jiang Yuqing looked down and hid the emotions in his eyes. "Let's go." Mu Qinghe went forward and activated the transportation array. The group of people quickly disappeared. The cold moonlight sprinkled on the vast and boundless Dahuang swamp, bringing with it a bit of desolation and loneliness. Unknowingly, a red spot appeared on the moon. The red dot gradually expanded and soon, it covered the entire area without a sound. The originally bright and unparalleled moon completely turned blood red. Looked strange and strange. The hot and dry desert during the day became incomparably cold at night. The night wind blew and it was bone-chilling. Under the undulating sand dunes, something seemed to be agitating. Suddenly, an ethereal voice was heard. "He's back?" It was impossible to tell whether this voice was male or female. It was as pleasant as music and intoxicating. A moment later, sand rolled down from the sand dunes not far away, forming a quicksand and making rustling sounds. How is this possible? This seemed to be the voice of a baby. It sounded very young, but the tone was very mature with a trace of resentment. Back then she said that she would be back in a few days. In the end, a few years have passed and there's still no trace of her. How can a person who goes back on her words be trusted? I don't want to see her again in this life. If you don't want to see her, then why do you look outside every night of the red moon? Do you think we don't know what you've been doing all day? This time the one who spoke seemed to be an old man. His voice was old and had a bit of laziness. This desert has been stirred up by you. There's no peace in this place. The baby-like voice was silent for a long time before it said fiercely, "So what if I'm looking? I just want to see how long she can drag it out. In this world, only she dares to lie to me like this." After scolding fiercely, it felt that it was not enough and muttered angrily, "That damn girl. When I see her, I must teach her a good lesson. Let's see if she dares to run away again. If you want to hit her, you can hit her. I can't bear to hit her." The old man laughed. "You old cunning man. Same to you." The voice that spoke at the beginning finally sounded again. That person seemed to chuckle and said slowly, "What's the use of saying this now? The girl hasn't been seen yet. But, why did she go to the mystic forest? I haven't been here for a few years and you've even forgotten the rules." The baby-like voice scolded in a low voice, but then it stopped abruptly. "Wait. There seems to be something wrong with the mystic forest?" The other two were silent for a moment. "That thing is coming out," the old man exclaimed. "Why did she go there at this time? Didn't I tell her before? It seems that the girl's courage has grown a lot after not seeing her for a few years." The pleasant and ethereal voice seemed to be drifting with the wind. "I'll go take a look myself." "I'll go too." "Why are you in such a hurry? Wait for me." The voices gradually quieted down. Only the subtle sound of sand flowing was left. The Red Moon Desert returned to peace again. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 769. On the other side of the mystic forest, a few people had sneaked into it. How long has it been? How did the mystic forest become like this? Someone came. I think it's Mu Qinghe and a bunch of black cavalry. Also, there are a few more that we haven't seen before. These people are really unlucky to come here and encounter such a situation. Wait. Why is that sparrow gone? I think I smell the red-tailed phoenix. Did that sparrow successfully break through? How is that possible? That fellow is missing half of her soul. Wait, there seem to be a few more people in front. Those two silly fellows are still here? Why are there a few more little ones? That sparrow really seems to have broken through. But why do I feel like she's underground? Could it be that she's old so her ears and eyes aren't working well? You're right. She's underground. I think she's with that thing. The one who said this was the elder. Once he said this, the other two instantly quietened down. After a moment, that baby-like voice sounded angrily. "I told you to dig that thing out and give it to her. Give it to her. You just had to say that the timing wasn't right. Great, she really went down by herself now. If that girl bumps into it, I'll beat you up." There's nothing wrong with a child wanting something, but that thing isn't normal. If we really gave it to her directly, who knows what kind of trouble might have arisen. The pleasant voice didn't sound that anxious as it spoke slowly. "I wonder who said that he wanted to teach that girl a lesson just now, but in the blink of an eye, he became angry with us because of her. Big Bao, you're really impressive. Try calling me Big Bao again." "Little Bao? Damn pervert, you're courting death. Can the two of you fight further away? Don't disturb me from looking at the girl." Scram. Fram. This commotion didn't attract the attention of Qin Yi and the rest. The night was as cold as water. Everything here was no different from during the day. Yi Ranran and Mu Hongyu were already asleep. Chang Wanzhou was sitting cross-legged beside the two of them, the cloud sky copper sword lying across his knees. As Lei Laosi and Qin Yi had powerful cultivations, they didn't need to sleep. As long as they regulated their breathing, they could recover their energy. The two of them watched over Mu Hongyu and the others while looking at the completely withered Wan Yeshan. Suddenly, the wind in the forest became louder. On the mother tree, a branch broke and fell to the ground, making a sound. Lei Laosi suddenly jumped up. "Who?" He glanced around nervously, but he didn't find anyone. Qin Yi rubbed his glabella helplessly. "It's just a broken branch. It's not a big deal. Fourth brother, you're too tense." Lei Laosi looked over and scratched his head awkwardly. I thought," he sighed, unable to hide his disappointment. Just now he thought that His Highness had come out. Qin Yi also knew that Lei Laosi was too worried about Tu Luiyue, so he said gently, "Rest for a while first." However, Lei Laosi shook his head and refused. Seeing his determined expression, Qin Yi didn't persuade him anymore. The forest quietened down again. "Old thing, have you not moved for too long that your limbs aren't nimble? With that commotion just now, do you want the entire Dahuang swamp to know that you're here?" Big Bao's voice was filled with disdain. The elder coughed. "That was an accident. Who told you two to keep quarreling? It's more important to find the girl first." "That's right. We can only come out during the night of the red moon once a month. Other than that, we don't know what happens in the outside world. The time we can freely move around outside is at most 4 hours. This is a rare opportunity, so we have to hurry up." The few of them stopped quarreling and rushed down together. "It seems like that thing's seal broke by itself. Look at this place. How much has it ruined? It's been so many years. That seal should have rotted long ago. It's already a miracle that it can last until today. However, I'm curious. Could it be that the girl calculated the time long ago and specially came at this time? It's not impossible. But she's really gutsy to barge in here. I guess she should have broken through again, right? Isn't that obvious? Back then the space below seems to be locked up by that thing. Girl is really there. I'll go check it out first. Get out of my way." "What's there to quarrel about? Do the two of you want to compete with me in terms of looks? Girl has always liked me the most. Right, I'm going." "Damn pervert, you're shameless." Tu Luiyue was focused on cultivating. After breaking through to the intermediate stage 5, she intentionally slowed down the speed of absorbing energy. There was a gap between the intermediate stage and the peak stage, and she had to seriously fill it to ensure that it was solid. Even though Tu Luiyue wanted to improve her skills as soon as possible, she wouldn't blindly do something radical. Suddenly her ears twitched. Why did it sound like someone was talking? She opened her eyes and looked up subconsciously. The green halo almost completely blocked her vision, and the space above was dark. She couldn't see anything clearly. It didn't seem any different from before. "What's wrong?" Taizu asked curiously. Tu Luiyue pointed up. "Taizu, did you hear someone talking?" "No." Taizu looked up curiously. "How could there be someone here?" "Did you hear wrongly?" Chu Luiyue frowned slightly. At this time it was indeed unlikely that someone would come here. Maybe she really heard wrongly. She retracted her gaze and was about to continue cultivating when she suddenly heard a call. "Girl, digression, 12 o'clock, tomorrow. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network." Chapter 770. Chu Liyue's heart seemed to have been touched by something. She looked up again. Although she still couldn't see anything clearly, she had an inexplicable feeling that she was being watched. That voice was definitely not her hallucination. That voice was calling her, and it sounded very intimate. However, that voice and tone were very unfamiliar. He seemed to have never heard it before. But somehow it seemed vaguely familiar. There weren't many people who could call her that, and those who had the ability to reach here were even fewer. Who was it? The moment Chu Liyue looked up, the three people who were originally filled with anticipation and joy were all stunned. It's been a few years. How did this girl's appearance change so much? And she looks much younger? Lan Xiao, who was at the front, crossed his arms and touched his chin with one hand as he said in a daze. He only knew that when one cultivated to a certain level they would never age. But that depended on their age. If a 20-year-old and an 80-year-old crossed that threshold at the same time, there would naturally be a huge difference. Other than that, he had never heard of anyone who could rejuvenate themselves. "Lan Xiao, your eyesight isn't as good as mine. That girl isn't a girl." Diwu Zhangzi stroked his white beard and chuckled. "You haven't seen that girl for a few years and you actually forgot what she looks like? Let's see what you can say when she finds out." If it were any other time, Lan Zhan would definitely refute him. But at this moment he couldn't care less. His eyes were staring straight at the girl below, and his brows were slightly furrowed. That's not right. He naturally remembered what the girl looked like, and logically speaking he definitely wouldn't mistake her. But this girl, that's the girl. Dugu Mabao, who had been silent all this while, finally spoke. Although his tone was cold because his voice was too similar to a baby's, it sounded a little out of place, as if a child was pretending to be an adult. Lan Xiao and Diwu Zhangzi both fell silent for a moment. Although her appearance is different, the aura of this soul is definitely the same. Although Dugu Maobao had a bad temper, he had always been very accurate in this aspect. Since even he had said so, then it must be true. Diwu Zhangzi widened his eyes in shock and lowered his head to take a closer look. However, the girl had already retracted her gaze. From their position they could only see the top of her head. No wonder. When I first saw her, I subconsciously thought that she was a girl. I wasn't mistaken. Lan Xiao heaved a sigh of relief and glanced at Diwu Zhangzi. I didn't recognize her, but you? Diwu Zhangzi's face flushed red and he was somewhat embarrassed. This isn't entirely my fault. Who would have thought that this lass would actually change her appearance? Everything was fine, how did it end up like this? Diwu Zhangzi's question was also what the other two wanted to know. Lan Xiao pondered seriously for a moment. Could it be that the little girl dislikes her appearance for not being beautiful enough? Was that why he changed his face? Dugu Maobao looked at him as if he was an idiot. Damn pervert, do you think everyone is like you? You can change your face as you wish, but can this girl do the same? Besides, who in this world would think that her previous face wasn't beautiful enough? Lan Xiao didn't mind being called a damn pervert. Instead, he deeply agreed with the latter sentence. That's true. If it weren't for the fact that he doted on this girl, he would have already taken her face. That was really a rare beauty in this world. He raised his eyebrows slightly and there was some admiration in his eyes. However, her current appearance is still a little young and inexperienced. When she grows up, she won't lose to the past at all. Speaking of which, why is she tormenting herself like this? Dugu Maobao's face darkened. Not only did she change her face, but her body has also changed. These words made the other two's faces change slightly. To them, changing one's appearance was nothing much. However, it was different after changing her body. One must know that to a cultivator the physical body was extremely important. Dantung, core of essence, Yuan meridian. Once the physical body was abandoned, all these would be abandoned too. Moreover, that girl had the Tianjing Yuan meridian. The three of them fell into a short silence. Previously, they relied on their perception of the girl's soul. However, they didn't expect that other than this soul, the rest of the girl's body had been replaced. What exactly was going on? Do you think that the girl hasn't come for these few years? Could it be that she didn't forget, but something happened? Diwu Zhangzi said slowly. They had never thought of this possibility before. The girl was smart and cunning and she was extremely talented and strong. Back then she could still exchange a few blows with them. How could something have happened? From the bottom of their hearts they didn't want to believe this guess. However, if this was true, what exactly happened to cause her to change her body and start all over again? Diwu Zhangzi said, let's wait first. Seems that the girl is now at odds with that Tian baby. It won't be too late to ask her when she comes out. Dugu Maobao clenched his fists and his body was filled with killing intent. Lan Zhao's eyebrows twitched. He was afraid that he would make a scene now and start a massacre. He quickly said, hey Big Bao. Calm down. The girl hasn't come out yet. We'll talk about everything after we find out. What's the use of getting angry now? Dugu Maobao gritted his teeth and said word by word, where the hell did that Xiao kid go? His Highness the Holy Sun, who was reading files at his desk, suddenly sneezed. He put down the brush in his hand, rubbed his eyebrows and chuckled. Seems like someone is thinking about me. He paused for a moment and finished reading all the files in front of him. Then he got up and walked to the window. A snow-white figure suddenly flew down from the sky at high speed. The soldiers who were standing guard outside the hall all looked up in surprise. How long had it been? Why did His Highness's devil beast look like it had become stronger again? Shue Shue swept across the empty space in front of the hall, and a layer of frost actually condensed on the ground. Its figure had already entered the hall and disappeared in front of everyone's eyes. This time Shue Shue still chose to break the window and enter. Fortunately, the hall was spacious enough and the items used were all top-notch, so there was no need to worry about them being damaged. Shue Shue leaped into the room. Xiao looked at it and his thin lips curved up. You sure know how to pick the right time. Shue Shue had already guessed what its master wanted it to do. It wagged its tail happily and looked at Xiao with its icy blue eyes. After waiting for a while, Xiao's smile deepened. You can go first. I planned to bring Shue Shue along later, but it seems like I can't wait anymore. Shui Shui was very excited and ran out. Roar. Its roar shook the sky. It wasn't hard to tell how happy it was. Rong Xiu looked at its rapidly disappearing figure and raised his eyebrows. Even he felt a headache from the anger of those few people. Let Shui Shui go first. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 771. At this moment Shui Shui had no idea that it had been sold by its master. It was overjoyed as it tore through space and plunged into it. It headed straight for Dahuang's swamp. After a while Rong Xiu retracted his gaze. After pondering for a moment he pushed the door open and walked out. Greetings, Your Highness. Seeing him come out, the soldiers outside the door immediately bowed respectfully. You may rise. Rong Xiu's expression had returned to calmness, and no one could tell that he was angry. 36 respected Elder Ming hasn't returned yet? Not yet, Your Highness. Rong Xiu narrowed his eyes slightly. Calculating the time, he had been gone for quite some time. According to 36 respected Elder Ming's temper, he shouldn't have wasted so much time with the Ming division. He didn't intend to get involved in this. After all, the Ming division was too difficult to deal with. But now he had to rush to Dahuang's swamp as soon as possible. Then he had to find 36 respected Elder Ming to discuss this matter. He thought for a moment, then walked forward. In the dim space, the surroundings were silent. However, Chu Liwei felt as if someone was whispering in her ear. Although she couldn't hear it clearly, it was still there. Only after a long time had passed did it gradually quiet down. She glanced at Taizu without batting an eyelid, but didn't see any abnormality in his expression. It seemed that Taizu really didn't hear anything. Strange. Chu Liwei lowered her eyes and thought to herself. Could it be that someone deliberately let me hear these voices? But the other party doesn't seem to have any ill intentions, and even there's some undisguised joy in doting. It's as if they were very familiar with each other. Chu Liwei thought for a while but still came up with nothing. In the end she closed her eyes, put away her thoughts and continued to devour the 2 Tian babies' power. Bang! A crisp and soft sound was heard. Another fragment fell from the heaven-wrecking holy seed. Then it flew silently toward Chu Liwei and melted into the water screen, turning into a water droplet and entering her body. Seeing this scene, the three of them were all stunned. Even the furious Dugumabao was stunned. He stopped scolding Rong Xiu halfway. What is this girl doing? That layer of crystal was formed after the 2 Tian baby swallowed thousands of years of power. It was specially used to protect itself before it matured. He actually swallowed it just like that. Lan Shao clicked his tongue. I didn't expect that the lass would become younger, and her ability would also increase. See, I told you that you can't just dig it out and give it to her, right? Now the little girl can deal with it herself. Such top-notch existences usually had spirituality. It wasn't impossible to force it to submit, but if it carried unwillingness and anger, there would eventually be hidden dangers. Only by completely suppressing it and making it submit to him could it truly be considered his own. In that case he wouldn't have to worry about using it in the future. Although the little girl was only gnawing on small pieces, it was still extremely outstanding. As long as there was enough time, she would definitely be able to rely on her own ability to take down the 2 Tian baby. Diwu Zhangzi was secretly amazed. What is that water curtain? Can you guys see it? The lass is only a stage 5 warrior now, but with that water curtain she can actually go against the 2 Tian baby and even have the upper hand. Lan Shao looked over, shook his head and said very honestly, I can't see it. Dugu Malbao held back for a long time before saying unwillingly, I can't see it. The other two looked at him in surprise. Debao, you've been roaming the continent for many years and have seen more rare treasures than the two of us combined. There's actually something that you can't see the origin of? He had a fiery temper and was proud and stubborn. It wasn't easy for him to admit it. Dugu Malbao waved his hand in annoyance. It's so far away and there's the 2 Tian baby's divine realm blocking it. What can you see? When the lass finishes dealing with the 2 Tian baby, can't she just say it herself? No matter what, it's not an ordinary item. Shangguan Wan and the rest finally returned to Xiling after passing through several teleportation portals. The Pingliang Square was as noisy as usual. Suddenly, the largest teleportation portal in the middle started rotating slowly. Everyone turned to look at him, their faces filled with shock. Look. The teleportation portal is actually moving. Could it be that the third princess and the rest are coming back? It can't be, right? Didn't they just leave not long ago? Plus the time spent on the journey back and forth. They can't be coming back right after reaching Dahuang Swamp, right? But that teleportation portal is exclusively for them. Ever since they left, it hasn't been moved. Could it be that someone dares to use it without permission? Isn't that someone tired of living? While everyone was discussing, the surrounding black guards had already reacted quickly. The people on Pingliang Square were all chased down. The black guards surrounded the area, and the transportation array in the middle was also surrounded in a circle. The cold and stern black cavalry was ready for battle. It was as if they were welcoming a big shot. Seeing this scene, what else could the crowd not understand? To be able to make the black cavalry like this, the third princess and the rest must be back. In the face of such a serious aura, many people were silent. However, their eyes were still fixed on the center. Obviously, everyone wanted to see the results of the third princess leading the army to Dahuang Swamp to help His Majesty get the medicine. Soon, several figures appeared on the teleportation portal. Who else could it be but the third princess Shangguanwan? Standing beside her was Jiang Yuqing. The surrounding black cavalry immediately knelt down to welcome her. Welcome back, third princess. The onlookers naturally had to bow as well. In an instant, a large number of people knelt down in all directions. Rise, Shangguanwan said. Everyone stood up one after another. However, when they saw Shangguanwan's appearance clearly, many people were surprised. Shangguanwan's face was covered with a veil. Moreover, she was wearing a cloak with the hood on her head, almost covering half of her face. In such a dress, everyone could only see a pair of eyes and the rest was tightly covered. Although it was winter at this time because it was almost spring, it was not that cold. It was really a little strange for Shangguanwan to be dressed like this. However, ordinary people were naturally not qualified to ask these questions. A young man stepped forward. He seemed to be the general of the Black Cavalry. The last General Zhou Xian greets the third princess. Eldest young master. Deputy General. Shangguanwan did not want to stay here any longer, so she directly said, all the Black Cavalry soldiers and disciples of various sects have worked very hard on this trip. Go back and rest. In addition, I have something important to discuss with the court officials. Pass down the order. All the major sect leaders and aristocratic family heads are to go to the palace immediately. Although Zhou Xian was confused, he immediately said, yes. Digression. In the morning, the editor suddenly said that the names of the articles could not be punctuated, so everyone began to change the names. It was a chaotic morning. The meeting continued at 6 p.m. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from AI Network. Chapter 772. No one expected their return to be so sudden and so dull. Back then, the third princess led 1,000 black cavalry and several disciples from various sects to Dahuang Swamp. They had a powerful lineup and a magnificent momentum. But no. This was simply too surprising. Zhou Xian and the others were also very puzzled. According to the plan, the third princess and the others should be back in about a month. But how long had it been? Moreover, logically speaking, they should have notified them before they came back. But they didn't receive any news at all. If they hadn't seen the teleportation array start to move, they wouldn't have known that they were back. Shangguanwan's face was covered with scars and couldn't be completely covered with a veil. Helplessly, she could only cover it with a hood. Although it looked a little strange, it could be completely covered. How many pairs of eyes in West Hill were watching her? Once her disfigured appearance was seen by others, who knew what kind of storm it would cause. Therefore, even if this appearance would cause people to speculate and discuss, she still insisted on it. She wanted to take a carriage back to the palace, but they came back too suddenly and it was definitely too late now. After giving instructions, Shangguanwan directly lifted her feet and walked forward. Jiang Yuqing was half a step behind her and walked with her. After a short moment of silence, the remaining black guards and disciples of various sects also dispersed. This scene was actually very awkward. The onlookers looked at each other. What's going on? Just like that. I thought that we would come back in glory. This is different from what I expected. Don't you see that the Black Cavalry has lost a lot of people? And the disciples of those sects seem to have lost a lot. It seems to be true. It seems that there are about 300 to 400 black cavalry who didn't come back. Hiss, the casualties in this trip to Dahuang Swamp are so heavy. It was originally a dangerous place, so this result is normal, right? In the past, when Vice Admiral Mu led the army, more than half of them were killed or injured. But at that time it was a rebellion in Dahuang Swamp. Now that Dahuang Swamp has been pacified, isn't it a little strange? The third princess also felt a little strange when she saw this. But since it was so tragic, it should be because they had seized a lot of medicinal herbs that His Majesty needed, right? Everyone discussed in low voices. All sorts of voices kept entering Shangguanwan's ears. Anger surged in her chest and all the blood in her body rushed to her head. Her face under the veil was torn apart again because of her ferocious expression. This made her even more annoyed. Those words were like invisible slaps that ruthlessly slapped her face. She quickened her pace. Mu Qinghe did not leave with them. Instead, she stayed behind to take care of the black cavalry. After Lu San respectfully sent off Shangguanwan and the others, he looked at Mu Qinghe in confusion. He was a little anxious. Deputy General, why didn't you inform us that you were coming back this time? This welcome is too hasty. Mu Qinghe shook her head. I've kept this matter in mind, so I didn't have time to inform you. It's fine. Immediately send people to bring the injured black cavalry back to recuperate. In addition, Tian Zhuangzhuang and the others will report the casualties to you. I'll leave them to you to deal with the aftermath. Lu San's heart sank when he heard this. The last general understands. He looked up and quickly scanned the surroundings. He realized that the number of casualties might be much higher than he had expected. His mood became heavier. Dahuang Swamp was indeed full of danger. But ever since Mu Qinghe led the troops to quell the rebellion a few years ago, it had actually become much better. Logically speaking, such a situation shouldn't have happened. However, he didn't dare to ask too much and could only follow Mu Qinghe's instructions. As for the disciples of the other sects, the situation wasn't any better. They were different from the Black Cavalry. The Black Cavalry was an army, and their duty was to obey. However, the relationship between the various sects and the Tianling royal family wasn't completely submissive. They respected the Tianling royal family, and at the same time the Tianling royal family also respected them. Those who could enter these sects were undoubtedly geniuses. Moreover, those who were selected to go to Dahuang Swamp this time were 1 in 100 and were extremely outstanding. Now that they were dead and injured, it was a huge loss to the various sections. Why are there only 3 people from the Purple Shao Sword sect? Didn't they go with 10 people when they went? They're the ones who suffered the most losses, right? The other sects also suffered casualties, but none of them are like them, I think. Wait, where are the people from the Chongshu Pavilion? Why haven't they appeared yet? As soon as this was said, everyone fell silent for a moment. Countless gazes quickly scanned the scene, but they didn't see anyone from the Chongshu Pavilion. Only 3 people went to the Chongshu Pavilion. In addition, Chu Luyue and Chong Wanzhou had recently become famous, so they were especially eye-catching. But now not a single one of them had appeared. Could it be that the people from the Chongshu Pavilion are all? Someone in the crowd softly said half a sentence. He didn't say the rest, but everyone knew what he meant. Everyone's expression became complicated and subtle, and their eyes were all different. It wasn't easy for the Chongshu Pavilion to produce 2 top geniuses. Were they really going to die? Without Chu Luyue and Chong Wanzhou, the Chongshu Pavilion situation would definitely become more difficult in the future. Spring Breeze Restaurant. In the private room, Shui Lu and Jian Fengqi were sitting facing each other by the window. Shui Lu hugged the pipa but didn't play it. She only looked at Jian Fengqi opposite her and asked, "So, everything went smoothly? Of course there won't be any problems with me taking action personally." Jian Fengqi leaned lazily against the back of the chair, his sword-like eyebrows slightly raised with undisguised arrogance. Shui Lu sneered. "Those 2 aren't in West Hill, of course it's more convenient for you to do things." Jian Fengqi didn't deny it either. When his father urged him to go to Dahuang Swamp, he refused to go no matter what and insisted on staying in West Hill. Wasn't that all for this? Anyway, things are progressing well now. Next we just need to... Suddenly there was a commotion on the street outside the window. Jian Fengqi immediately fell silent. Shui Lu opened the window and looked down. A trace of shock flashed across her face. The Black Cavalry? Jian Fengqi sensed that something was wrong, so he went over to take a look. Then he frowned. What? Shangguanwan is back. On the wide street, the Black Cavalry was on alert on both sides. A few figures were coming from the middle. The person in front was wearing a cloak and a veil, but Jian Fengqi recognized her at first glance. She was Shangguanwan. And beside her was Jiang Yuqing. There were also a few servants following behind the two of them, all of them maintaining a distance that was neither too close nor too far. Shouldn't they be back in a month or so? Why would they? Shui Lu'er asked in confusion. Jian Fengqi narrowed his eyes and said, "She's back after finding medicine for His Majesty. It should be a big celebration. Why is she so timid?" With that he flicked his finger. "I'd like to see what she's feeling so guilty about, hiding it so well." Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 773. Wait. As soon as Jian Fengqi moved, Shui Lu'er grabbed his wrist before his force could fly out. Because of this distraction, he was unable to launch his attack. Jian Fengqi glanced at her with dissatisfaction. "Little Lu, why are you stopping me? Maybe there's a shocking secret hidden under that veil." He knew Shangguanwan too well. Shangguanwan had always valued her appearance very much. She also liked to dress herself up perfectly to show off to the world and win praise. She was very particular about her makeup and hair accessories at all times. She didn't allow any mistakes to be made. Today she was wearing a veil for the first time. She even wore a hood to cover herself up tightly. It would be strange if there wasn't something fishy going on. She rushed back from Dahuang Swamp in such a hurry without any news beforehand. It was obvious that she had made a sudden decision. Under such circumstances, her actions were even more intriguing. Shui Lu'er glared at him and flung his wrist away. "If I didn't stop you, did you really intend to make things difficult for her in public? Are all those Black Cavalry soldiers useless? If you make a move 1 second ago, they might come knocking on your door the next second." Jian Fengqi coughed, retreated, and smiled eagerly in a fawning manner. "I was just joking. Little Lu, don't be angry. There's no need to be angry over someone like her, right?" Shui Lu'er also understood that Jian Fengqi knew the severity of the matter, so she didn't continue to say anything. She turned around and saw that Shangguanwan and the rest had already left quickly. She was a little suspicious. Why do they look like they're in a hurry? Are they in a hurry to return to the palace? Jian Fengqi rubbed his chin. "I knew that there must be a shameful secret hidden under that veil. The palace is her territory. Of course she's in a hurry to return. Fortunately, I've already done what I need to do." If Shangguanwan had returned earlier, he might have been in trouble. Thinking of this, Shui Lu'er heaved a sigh of relief. "You've handled this matter well." Jian Fengqi had a bright smile on his face and he was carefree and unrestrained. "Little Lu'er has always been reluctant to praise me. Today is a rare occasion." Shui Lu'er couldn't be bothered with him and changed the topic. "Since they're back, the rest of the troops should be back too, right?" Jian Fengqi's eyes flickered. This meant that Mu Hongyu and Chu Luiyue should be behind them. He glanced outside a few more times, only to see that after Shangguanwan and the rest left, no one followed them. Just when the two of them were puzzled, a voice came from outside the window. "Haven't you heard?" 2. Chu Luiyue sat cross-legged and focused on her cultivation. Her aura continued to grow stronger. B. Diwu Zhangzi finally spoke. "We don't know how long it'll take for the girl to come out." Lan Xiao and Dugumobao realized this too. Lan Xiao was a little worried. "But if we don't see the girl today, we'll have to wait another month. The night of the Crimson Moon only happened once a month." Dugumobao turned and left. "So be it. We've waited for a few years. Why should we be afraid of a month?" The other two looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes. He had always been the one who stuck to the girl the most. Now he was willing to be the first to leave? Diwu Zhangzi followed and asked. "You're really not going to wait any longer?" Dugu Malbao said coldly. "If we wait any longer, will she see us?" Diwu Zhangzi was speechless. The girl was trapped in there. Of course she couldn't see them. She's cultivating. Let her cultivate in peace. As for meeting, she's already here. What difference does it make if we meet earlier or later? Based on her current strength, she would definitely need a month to completely devour the 2 Tian baby. What's the hurry? Big Bao is right. Lan Xiao nodded in agreement and followed. Staying up late is bad for the skin. I have to go back and catch up on sleep. The remaining 2 quieted down. A moment later. You're living dead. Why do you need to catch up on sleep? Lan Xiao, I'll ask you again seriously. Are you sick? Lan Xiao felt sorry for himself and was very resentful. He secretly thought that these 2 didn't know how to appreciate his beauty. What do you know? The girl likes beautiful people. I can understand. You 2, one young and one old. No matter how hard you work, you can't compare to me. What's there to compete for? Diwu Zhangzi reminded objectively. Have you forgotten Rongxiu? You've changed so many faces, but none of them can compare to him. The beautiful fantasy in Lan Zhao's head was instantly shattered. He gritted his teeth and cursed. Damn it! Dugu Maobao suddenly sneered. Speak of the devil. Just as he was thinking about it, it came. His figure flashed and he quickly rushed up. It was the last moment before dawn and the forest was dark. The rustling wind blew past and quickly disappeared. Not long later, Red Moon Desert. Suddenly, a black spatial crack appeared in the void. Immediately, a snow-white figure jumped out from it. Shueshue shook its body and a lot of frost fell. Under the red moonlight in the night sky, it reflected a faint light. It looked around, sniffed, and began to search for Chu Liyue. It seemed to be Russell. At this moment, a strange sound suddenly came from below. Shueshue looked down. It saw that there seemed to be something moving under the undulating sand dunes. It blinked, then as if it suddenly thought of something, it looked up. A red moon was hanging high in the black night sky. A hint of fear flashed across Shueshue's eyes. Without a second thought, it turned around and ran. What a coincidence! But before it could run out, it heard a soft and gentle voice. Little snowflake, long time no see. Why are you running? Shueshue didn't even turn its head and its claws dug even harder. However, not only did it not run forward, but its body kept moving backward and it even fell to the ground. When it was pressed on the cold sand, Shueshue finally realized that it was still too inexperienced. It made a prompt decision and it was very decisive. It lay down obediently. It even wagged its tail to express its joy. Little snowflake has become smarter after not seeing you for a few years. The voice came closer as if the person was right beside its ear. Shueshue's body stiffened and it didn't dare to move. It whimpered softly and its pair of ice blue eyes were watery, looking very docile and cute. A wise man submits to circumstances. A moment later, a baby-like voice sounded coldly. Where's your master? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 774. Where's your master? Shueshue was stunned for a moment when she heard this, but she quickly reacted. His master's calm and indifferent eyes immediately appeared in his mind. Shueshue slowly widened its eyes. No wonder. No wonder master didn't agree to it when it wanted to come, but he suddenly allowed it. It naively thought that it was because it had been cultivating diligently recently and increased its strength. It didn't expect. It had been betrayed by its master. Master must have known that it was the night of the crimson moon, so he deliberately let it come. And from the looks of it, they weren't in a good mood now. Was this the reason why master let it come first? Shueshue was heartbroken and regretful. It thought to itself that it was foolish to form a contract with him back then. So what if it was a divine beast? It was still betrayed, wasn't it? Shueshue lowered its head dejectedly, looking like it had nothing to live for. Seeing its expression, Dugu Maobao understood what was going on. It couldn't help but sneer. He's really straightforward. He sent you here and let you take the blame? Lan Xiao touched his face and his voice became gentler. What's the use of being too good-looking? He has a bad heart. That girl must be blind to like him. Dugu Maobao was silent for a moment and its voice became colder. Who are you calling blind? Lan Xiao. What did I say? I didn't say anything. Little Shueshue is quite pitiful. It has already taken the blame a few times. Be gentler this time. Diwu Zhangzi said faintly. Do you think it's my turn to do anything? Could they stop Dugu Maobao from doing anything he wanted? Shueshue thought that it had a chance of survival when it heard Lan Xiao pleading for it, but Diwu Zhang's words made it lose all hope. It lowered its head pitifully and its head was pressed against its paws. It was very uneasy. After a moment Dugu Malbao said, "Come here." Mystic Forest. The long night passed. A layer of bright light gradually lit up the sky, plating the clouds with a layer of gold. This added a bit of warmth to the originally lonely and desolate Mystic Forest. However, the few people in the forest didn't feel better, because the mother tree in front of them still did not move. As for Chu Luyue, he was nowhere to be found. He had no intention of coming out. Even Qin didn't know how long he had to wait. At this moment they were completely unaware of what had happened in the Mirror Lake in the Red Moon Desert. The West Hill. After the Black Cavalry escorted Shangguan Wan, Jiang Yuqing and the others away, someone said something that immediately caused the whole street to boil. "Are you serious?" There were a total of 3 disciples from the Chongshu Pavilion, including Chu Luyue and Chong Wanzhou. Logically speaking, they should have no problem protecting themselves. How could they all die? Where did you hear this news from? Of course it's real. When the 3rd princess and the others came back, I was at Pingliang Plaza. The Black Cavalry and the sect disciples had all returned. Only the Chongshu Pavilion was empty. If he's not dead, then what is? I saw it too. They really didn't come back. That's impossible. So many people who were weaker than them came back alive. Who can be sure about such things? About 300 to 400 people from the Black Cavalry died. The 3 disciples from the Chongshu Pavilion probably acted together and were completely annihilated. This time the Chongshu Pavilion really suffered a huge loss. That's right. There was just a slight improvement and now Chu Luyue and Chong Wanzhou are gone. What a pity. Just as the crowd was discussing fervently, a figure suddenly jumped down from upstairs and directly jumped in front of the few people who were talking. He then grabbed the collar of the man who spoke first. "What did you just say?" The man who spoke was caught off guard and was easily grabbed by the person. His collar was tightly gripped and he almost couldn't breathe. "Who are you?" He was enraged and instinctively wanted to curse out loud. However, when he took a closer look, he got a shock. Young Master Jian? Many people in Shilling City recognized Jian Fengqi's face. "Young Master Jian, let's talk nicely." Jian Fengqi stared at him and asked word by word, "I'm asking you, who did you say died?" The man was panicking. He was afraid that Jian Fengqi would twist his neck and break his neck. He hurriedly said, It's those people from the Chongshu Pavilion. I'm not sure. Young Master Jian, please spare my life. The people from the major sects have already gone back. If you want to know, you can ask them." Jian Fengqi pushed him away, went on his toes and swiftly headed for Pingliang Square. According to the time, there should still be many people who hadn't gone too far from Pingliang Square. The man who was pushed away struggled to get up and looked in the direction Jian Fengqi left, still in shock. The crowd around them also quieted down because of this. Someone couldn't help but murmur, "Why does the young master of Dragon Teeth Mountain care so much about what happened at the Chongshu Pavilion? I heard that Dragon Teeth Mountain and Chongshu Pavilion have a good relationship. I wonder how the people of Chongshu Pavilion will react when they hear this news." Upstairs, Shuelu looked out of the window. Jian Fengqi's figure quickly disappeared from her sight. Her willowy eyebrows furrowed slightly. "I'm afraid things are going to get out of hand." Jian Fengqi moved quickly and soon bumped into Zhu Hong and the others who were on their way back. At a glance, they were all injured and their auras were extremely weak. Jian Fengqi's heart skipped a beat. "Zhu Hong." Zhu Hong looked up. "Young master." Jian Fengqi quickly went to them and asked anxiously, "What's going on at the Chongshu Pavilion?" Digression. The title of the book should be changed in the next 2 days. Don't take it off the shelves just because it's unfamiliar to you. You must keep me here. Tomorrow at 12 o'clock. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 775. Seeing how anxious he was, Zhu Hong hurriedly said, "Young master, don't worry. It's a long story about the people from the Chongshu Pavilion." Seeing Zhu Hong's reaction, Jian Fengqi felt a little relieved. Things might be different from what those people were saying. Zhu Hong took a deep breath. "Young master, let's go back first. It's not convenient here. On the streets, anything they said could be overheard by someone with ulterior motives. Although Jian Fengqi was anxious, he could only suppress it. Then he glanced at the few people and frowned slightly. Where's Hongyu? Zhu Hong pursed his lips. She's with the people from the Chongshu pavilion. Jian Fengqi's heart sank. Young master, don't worry. They're fine now. Zhu Hong saw that his expression was not right and quickly added. Jian Fengqi was even more confused. Chu Luiyue, Mu Hongyu and the others did not come back with the main group, but Zhu Hong said that they were fine. What in the world had happened? Countless questions surfaced in his mind, but Jian Fengqi suppressed them and looked at them again. These people were all injured to varying degrees. Zhu Hong was still fine, but the others could barely stand. Let's go back to Dragon Teeth Mountain first. Dragon Teeth Mountain. As soon as the seriously injured people returned, they were immediately sent for treatment and recuperation. Zhu Hong was the only one left. He was in good health and was the leader, so he naturally had to stay. After they returned to the mountain, Xianxia heard the news and immediately rushed over. Zhu Hong explained the ins and outs of the matter to Xianxia and Jian Fengqi in detail. This time it's all thanks to Miss Chu's help that we could come back safely. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. After that, the room fell into silence. The father and son's expressions were very solemn and serious. After a while, Xianxia said, "So now Chu Luiyue is missing and the rest of the people are still in the mystic forest looking for her whereabouts?" Zhu Hong nodded. "Originally we also wanted to stay and help, but considering that our people were all injured, even if we stayed we might not be able to help much. We might even become a burden to everyone, so in the end we chose to come back with the main group." Xianxia heaved a long sigh. "That's right. It's only right that you do this. In a place like the Great Desolate Swamp, unless one was a top-notch expert, anyone could become trouble for others. Not to mention the injured ones." Jian Fengqi suddenly said, "Are you saying that Snapper and Chu Liwei have been working together since the beginning?" "Yes." At that time, the few of them had taken the lead and headed into the depths of the forest, just in time to avoid that accident. Because of that, none of them were injured when we met again. Jian Fengqi had mixed feelings. Mu Hongyu and Chu Luiyue were very close, so it was normal for them to work together. "I just don't know what the current situation is like. Master, young master, don't worry. With Qin Yi and Lei Laosi around, nothing should happen to Snapper and the rest." Zhu Hong was actually a little worried, but he could only place his hopes on Qin Yi and the rest now. As for Chu Luiyue, he didn't dare to mention it again. The possibility of her surviving was simply too small. Xianxia suddenly asked, "The Qin Yi and Lei Laosi you're talking about? Who exactly are they? Have they really been staying in the mystic forest to protect that legendary fiend?" Zhu Hong explained, "The two of them are very strong. Even in the entire Tianling dynasty they're definitely top-notch experts, but we don't know the two of them. However, they did seem to have stayed in the mystic forest for a very long time. As for the one they were protecting, to be precise, it was a 9-colored heavenly pheasant. After that, it successfully broke through and finally became a red-tailed phoenix." 9-colored heavenly pheasant. The father and son both exclaimed in shock. Isn't that the same as the fiend that the princess had a contract with? If it were any other 9th-grade fiend, they definitely wouldn't have such a huge reaction. However, it just had to be a 9-colored heavenly pheasant. For a moment the few of them didn't speak. After a long while, Jian Fengqi muttered softly, "What a coincidence. It's actually Lu Yu who contracted that 9-colored heavenly pheasant. Oh no, it's the red-tailed phoenix." Chu Luiyue originally looked similar to the princess, and now that she contracted this fiend, it made one's imagination run wild. It's a pity that she's nowhere to be found now, and I don't know if I can still find her. If she comes back in the end, she definitely won't be able to avoid Shangguan, making things difficult for her. Thinking about Shangguan, Jian Fengqi suddenly felt energized. "Right, how's the third princess?" Zhu Hong was dazed for a moment, as if he didn't quite understand what Jian Fengqi was asking. Jian Fengqi rephrased his question. "Is there something wrong with her body or her face?" Zhu Hong shook his head. "I don't know." Back then, the ones standing near Shangguan were Jiang Yuqing, Mu Qinghe and the rest. In addition, she quickly covered herself up tightly afterward, so even fewer people saw that her face was injured. Zhu Hong and the rest's attention was on Chu Luiyue, Mu Hongyu and the rest, so they naturally didn't know anything about this. Knock knock. There was a knock on the door. Master, the third princess has summoned all the people from the various sects and families to the palace to discuss important matters. The palace servants are already waiting outside. Xianxia stood up. Zhuhong, you should go back and recuperate first. As for Hong Yu and the rest, you don't have to worry too much. He's my disciple. If anything happens to her, I'll still be there as her master. Hearing him say this, Zhuhong instantly heaved a sigh of relief. It seems like the master has made preparations. I'll go to the palace to take a look first. Feng Qi, go back and make a trip to the Xianxia pavilion and tell them to relax first. I wonder how the rumors outside have spread now. Jian Fengqi actually wanted to go to the palace very much, but after hearing this he changed his mind. I know. Don't worry. Xianxia turned and left. Not long after, Jian Fengqi set off for the Xianxia pavilion. Just as Xianxia said, all kinds of news had spread throughout the entire Xiling city in a short period of time. The sudden return of Shangguanwan and the rest shocked everyone. In addition, the series of strange reactions they had after returning caused many speculations. The news that none of the Xianxia pavilion disciples returned spread to countless people's ears as if it had grown wings. Everyone had different reactions both openly and secretly. When Jian Fengqi rushed to the Xianxia pavilion, Yuqi Song had already followed the palace servants to the palace. Tianling Palace. Shangguanwan returned to Huayang Palace and chased everyone out. She took off her cloak, sat in front of the bronze mirror and carefully took off her veil. A face covered in scars and badly mutilated appeared in the bronze mirror. Shangguanwan stared at the face in the mirror as blood surged between her teeth. Thinking of how she still had to meet those people later, she suppressed the anger in her heart and took out a box of cream from the cabinet beside her. She carefully dipped it in and applied it to her face. Just as the cream touched her face, she instantly felt a burning pain. She finally couldn't help but cry out in pain. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from LoveNet. Chapter 776. Hearing her scream, Chan Yi, who was waiting outside, was startled and immediately asked, "What happened?" She immediately asked, "Your Highness, what's wrong? You're not allowed to come in." Shangguanwan immediately shouted. "Yes." Chan Yi quickly replied with a slight frown. When Her Highness returned, she hid herself very well. Chan Yi had already vaguely guessed something. Now it seemed like she was most likely right. How did she end up like this after going to Dahuang Swamp? Chan Yi looked up at the palace servants standing in the courtyard with a cold gaze. When everyone heard Shangguanwan's scream, they knew something was wrong. Sensing Chan Yi's dangerous gaze, they lowered their eyes and didn't even dare to breathe loudly. "All of you may leave." "Yes." Hearing this, everyone hurriedly left as if they had been pardoned. After they left, Chan Yi looked at the tightly shut door again. The intense burning sensation caused Shangguanwan's mind to go blank. She hurriedly looked at the bronze mirror, only to see that the wound on her face, which she had just applied the cream on, was faintly black. It was as if she had been scalded. The curled skin and flesh looked as if it had been burned by flames. It was slightly curled and slightly charred. Even though it was only a small patch, it was very obvious. So the pain just now was because I was really burned. Shangguanwan's face was filled with shock. What's going on? The cream was clearly a superior medicine for treating scars. How did it end up like this? She hurriedly looked at the box in her hand. That's right. This is the cream. It wasn't that she hadn't used it before. Occasionally when she bumped into something and got a scar, she would recover quickly with this. But now, Shangguanwan threw the cream to the side and leaned closer to the bronze mirror. Looking at the wound on her face, she was filled with worry. In order to retrieve the dancing lotus as soon as possible, she had sent people to gather the people from the various sects and aristocratic families the moment she returned. She wanted to use the cream to heal the wound on her face slightly so that she could be seen. However, she didn't expect that not only did it not heal, but it also ended up like this. Shangguanwan was very scared. Her body trembled slightly and her lips were pale. If she really couldn't recover her looks, she didn't dare to use the cream anymore, but what else could she use? Shangguanwan sat in front of the bronze mirror for a long time, conflicted and in pain. This continued until Chan Yi knocked on the door again. "Your Highness, all the sect leaders and patriarchs are about to reach Minghua Palace." Do you want me to help you with your grooming? Shangguan suddenly came back to her senses. Only then did she realize that she had not done anything for such a long time. Now that she was in such a sorry state, if others were to see her they would definitely mock her. She gritted her teeth. That's not necessary. Ben Gong will go to the hot springs. There was hot spring water behind Huayang Palace. Yes. Chani didn't dare to ask any more questions and respectfully agreed. Shangguan walked to the back alone, opened the side door and entered the hot spring area. Jiang Yuqing returned to the palace with Shangguan. However, Shangguan wasn't willing to face anyone with that face. Jiang Yuqing was also very tactful. After saying a few words he left Huayang Palace. After that he went straight to Qingfeng Palace. After leaving for so long, what he cared about the most was Her Majesty's current situation. When he arrived at Qingfeng Palace the security was still tight. Seeing him arrive, the palace servants bowed in unison. Greetings, Prince Consort. The wedding date of Jiang Yuqing and Shangguan had been set. That was what the palace called it. Jiang Yuqing nodded and asked as he walked in. As he walked in he asked, "Has Her Majesty shown any signs of waking up during this period of time?" The palace servants shook their heads. This was originally within Jiang Yuqing's expectations, but he was still somewhat disappointed when he heard it. Everything was done cautiously. Even if he had poisoned her too much back then, she should have woken up after such a long period of recuperation. However, there was no change in Her Majesty. This made him even more irritable. Just as Jiang Yuqing was about to go in and take a look in person, the palace servants outside reported that everyone had arrived one after another and asked him to go over. In desperation, Jiang Yuqing could only withdraw his hand that was about to push the door open. After telling everyone to take good care of Her Majesty, he turned around and left. Qingfeng Palace regained its peace again. In the room, Shangguan, who had been in a coma for a long time, moved his fingers gently. Minghua Palace. The leaders of several major sects gathered here again. In addition, the masters of the aristocratic families in Xiling City were basically all here. Everyone was divided into two sides, greeting each other politely, but they all had their own thoughts in their hearts. Such a battle formation could not be said to be small. Shangguan and Jiang Yuqing had not appeared. In the main hall, discussions gradually arose. Her Highness the Third Princess suddenly brought people back from the Dahuang Swamp and gathered so many people. It seems that something really happened. I heard that there were heavy casualties in this trip to the Dahuang Swamp. Nearly 400 people of the Black Cavalry alone died. That's not all. The disciples of all the major sects also suffered injuries. Didn't you see how awful Song Wan of the Purple Shao Sword sect looked? 10 of them went this time and only 3 came back alive. This should be the most miserable family, right? Although everyone lowered their voices, everyone present was basically a top-notch powerhouse. How could they not hear it? Song Wan had indeed heard the news long ago. Until now he had not calmed down. He sat in his seat with a livid expression. His fists were clenched tightly and the veins on the back of his hands were popping out. However, he forced himself to endure it. Because those who could come here had high statuses. Unless he had no choice, he was also unwilling to offend anyone. Right at this moment the announcement sounded again. The pavilion master of the Chongshu Pavilion has arrived. The hall instantly quieted down. Everyone looked over at the same time with different expressions on their faces. They were the most well-informed people in Xiling City and naturally knew that none of the 3 disciples of the Chongshu Pavilion had returned. This basically meant that they all died in the Dahuang Swamp. Not long ago the Chongshu Pavilion was still in the limelight and held on to the name of the 4 major sections. Everyone thought that by relying on Chu Luyue and Chong Wanzhou, the Chongshu Pavilion's situation would gradually improve. They did not expect that all of them would be gone after just one trip to the Dahuang Swamp. This was undoubtedly a huge blow to the Chongshu Pavilion. However, out of everyone's expectations, Yuchi Song's expression was very calm, as if he did not feel any pain from losing his disciples. Under everyone's gazes, Wei Qi Song walked straight in. After a simple greeting, he sat down in his seat. Seeing him so calm and composed, everyone did not know how to react for a moment. Could it be that he still doesn't know what happened? Song Wan was in a bad mood and couldn't help but speak up in a strange tone. Pavilion Master Wei Qi, I heard that the 3 disciples of your pavilion who went to the Dahuang swamp did not return? Have to restrain your grief. The moment he finished speaking, the entire atmosphere seemed to have frozen. Yuchi-song looked up and glanced at Song Wan calmly and coldly. Why? Do you want to cry at the grave? Digression. Here is a February who has insomnia and is about to faint from hunger. Writing words is really an individual effort. 6 o'clock. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 777. This sentence nearly made Song Wan choke to death. His face turned pale, then green, and then red. His expression changed very excitedly. He suddenly stood up and said angrily, "What did you say?" He was originally very frustrated and depressed. How could he control himself after hearing this sentence? It was as if he was ignited by fire. He exploded. However, Yuchi-song's expression was indifferent. Everyone present should have heard what I said clearly. Why are you the only one who didn't hear it clearly? Is there something wrong with your ears? It seems like your ears are just like your mouth. They're just decorations. It's fine if you don't want them. Yuchi-song scolded Song Wan until he was black and blue all over with just a few words. Everyone was dumbfounded. Yuchi-song had always been a person of virtue and prestige. His speech and actions had always been very low-key. And ever since Chongshu Pavilion suffered consecutive blows more than a year ago, it was needless to say. The entire Chongshu Pavilion seemed to have become transparent. Precisely because of this, many people gradually stopped taking Chongshu Pavilion seriously. They originally thought that this time, the deaths of Chu Luiwei and the other 2 would be a huge blow to Yuchi-song and the others. Some even suspected that he wouldn't come to the palace at all. They didn't expect that not only did he come, but he was also so domineering. How many people in the entire Xiling city dared to speak to Song Wan like this? Many people exchanged glances and saw the shock in each other's eyes. Could it be that he suffered too much of a shock? Yuchi-song sat in his seat and allowed countless gazes to size him up. He remained as still as a mountain. Would he not know if his own disciple was dead or alive? Those 3 children just didn't come back with Shangguan Wan and the others, but he knew clearly that they were still fine. However, he didn't intend to publicize this news now. On the way here, he knew that someone would definitely use this to create trouble for their Chongshu Pavilion. If it was anything else, he would just turn a blind eye and be too lazy to fuss over it. However, Song Wan was talking about those 3 children and even cursed them to die. How could he tolerate it? Song Wan was dumbfounded. In his memory, Yuchi-song had never been so rude to anyone. He was so angry that he laughed and sneered. Pavilion Master Wei Qi, we're all part of the 4 great sects. I'm merely expressing my concern. Aren't your words a little too much? Yuchi-song glanced at him as if he was watching a joke. I heard that 7 outstanding disciples of the Purple Shao Sword sect died this time. I didn't expect that sect leader Song would still be in the mood to care about our Chongshu Pavilion. Song Wan's heart immediately choked up and he couldn't speak. They had indeed lost 7 disciples. Among the remaining 3, other than his own son Song Qingyan, who was in relatively good condition, the other 2 were severely injured. It was very likely that it would affect their future cultivation. Could be said that they were completely wiped out. One had to know that the people sent to the Great Desolate Swamp this time were all the most outstanding disciples of their Purple Shao Sword sect. As a result, they would have to spend another 2 to 3 years to repair the damage. At this moment, Xianxia suddenly spoke. I heard that Chu Luiwei helped save many people in the Mystic Forest. Not only our Dragon Teeth Mountain disciples, but the other sects also more or less received her help, right? As he spoke, he looked at Song Wan and deliberately asked. Song Wan, it seems that your precious son was also saved by them? Song Wan immediately retorted. Impossible. There's no such thing at all. Xianxia was shocked as he looked at the people beside him. Oh, I wonder if anyone here has heard of this matter? The entire hall fell into an eerie silence. Everyone had different expressions. Song Wan sneered. I know that Chu Luiwei has some capabilities, but with her abilities, it's probably difficult for her to even protect herself, let alone help others. And she even helped so much. Xianxia, what you're saying is too outrageous. After a moment, someone suddenly spoke. Dragon Teeth Mountain Master is right. Our sect's disciples were indeed saved by Chu Luiwei and the others. Song Wan immediately looked over with a frown and realized that the person speaking was the palace master of Holy Flame Palace. He sneered and was about to mock him when someone spoke again. Our Heavenly Secrets Residence's disciples did mention this when they returned. Song Wan's expression froze. It was fine if Xianxia said that alone, but everyone actually admitted it one after another? The other sects were all silent, obviously not intending to refute. This made the patriarchs of the various aristocratic families sitting across from him shocked. As they didn't participate in this matter much, they didn't know much. Previously they only thought that there were heavy casualties in Dahuang Swamp and didn't expect there to be such a thing inside. Xianxia touched his chin and broke the silence. Song Wan, it seems like your precious son didn't tell you on purpose? Then he probably didn't say that Yang Qiner in your sect chose to self-destruct because she was found to be problematic, right? I heard that she almost harmed many people back then. Song Wan suddenly looked up with a shocked expression. He really didn't know. After Song Qingyan and the two disciples returned, he rushed over to take a look at them immediately. The two seriously injured disciples were quickly sent for treatment. Song Qingyan didn't say much and only said that he was very tired, so he went to rest. Song Wan's heart ached and only cared about being thankful that his son was still alive. How could he care about anything else? He quickly reacted and said sternly, "Dragon Teeth Mountain Lord, you can't spout nonsense." Right at this time, a voice suddenly sounded from outside the hall. What he said previously was indeed true. Everyone looked back and saw that it was Jiang Yuqing. No one reported it and they didn't know how long he had been listening outside. Jiang Yuqing walked into the hall and everyone kept quiet. Song Wan became nervous. Jiang Yuqing was present and had a special identity. If he said that, he hurriedly restrained his expression. After Qingyan came back he was in low spirits, so I let him rest. I didn't know much about it. Jiang Yuqing shook his head lightly. Actually, he didn't take this to heart at all. His attention was mostly on Yuqi-song. Before he came he happened to see Yuqi-song enter first and then heard Song Wan's provocation. Thus he decided to listen outside for a while. What made him feel strange was that Yuqi-song seemed to know that Chu Luiwei and the rest hadn't returned yet, but he didn't seem to be very sad. It was fine for Chong Wanzhou and the rest. Yuqi-song might know that they were just looking for someone in the mystic forest. But Chu Luiwei, she was dead. Yuqi-song shouldn't have such a reaction, Prince Consort. This anxious shout attracted everyone's attention. Everyone looked up in unison. They saw a figure quickly walking over from outside the hall. Jiang Yuqing frowned. It was Chani. Why didn't Shangguan Wan come? He walked over, but before he could say anything he heard Chani say, "Prince Consort, the third princess has something on at the last minute. Please go to Huayong Hall first. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network." Chapter 778. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone was shocked. Everyone present had been gathered by Shangguan Wan. Now that everyone was here she didn't come. Instead she wanted to call Jiang Yuqing over. What was going on? Something came up at the last minute. What could it be for her to abandon everyone here and invite Jiang Yuqing alone? Even if he was the prince consort and had an extraordinary status, this didn't seem appropriate, right? Everyone present was an important figure in the Tianling dynasty. Everyone looked at each other. Their expressions weren't very good. Jiang Yuqing was also very surprised. He frowned inwardly. No matter how impudent Shangguan Wan was, she wouldn't dare to act recklessly at this time. None of the people here could be easily offended. Even His Majesty had to be polite to these people, let alone third Princess Shangguan Wan. If she hadn't gone crazy, then something important had really happened. He glanced at Chani and found that although Chani had her eyes lowered, her face was very tense. There was some anxiety in her eyes. His heart sank and he turned to look at everyone. "Please wait for a moment. We'll be back soon." Although everyone was dissatisfied, they wouldn't show it on their faces. They all told him to go quickly. Jiang Yuqing knew that he had offended them this time. However, the situation was urgent and there was nothing he could do. He turned and walked in the direction of Huayong Palace. Chani quickly followed. After the two of them left, the palace fell silent again. No one said anything, but they were more or less dissatisfied. Xianxia hadn't officially ascended the throne yet, but she was already so bold. She made so many people wait for her. When the time was up, she still didn't appear. Instead, she called Jiang Yuqing away, leaving everyone here. Before this, whether it was His Majesty or the princess, they had never done such an inappropriate thing. The people from the aristocratic families were fine, but the people from the sects were especially unhappy. Their families had suffered heavy losses in the Dahuang swamp trip. They wanted to ask Xianxia for an explanation. Who would have thought that she wouldn't even show her face now? A cold and solemn atmosphere spread in the palace. Jiang Yuqing and Chani traveled quickly. When they arrived at Huayang Palace, they discovered that the palace was already heavily guarded. He felt more and more uneasy as he walked toward the main hall. When she reached the door, Chani stopped. Prince Consort, the third princess, said that only you can enter. Jiang Yuqing nodded, a little upset. He pushed the door open and walked in. The moment he entered, Chani closed the door behind him. Jiang Yuqing's expression turned serious. What exactly happened that made Huayang Palace so vigilant? He called out, but no one answered. He looked around but didn't see Xianxia. Instead, he saw a broken box of cream beside the bronze mirror. He paused for a moment before continuing to walk inside. If it wasn't here, then it should be in the hot spring inside. Just as he walked to the door, he was hesitating whether to go in and look for her when he heard a painful groan coming from inside. It was weak and oppressive, and it also carried a trace of deep fear. It was Xianxia. Jiang Yuqing didn't stay any longer as he directly pushed the door open and walked in. The moment he walked in, a hot and humid steam surged toward him. This was a gigantic hot spring. Smoke surrounded it and he couldn't see anyone clearly. However, Jiang Yuqing had been here before, so he knew where it was. Amidst the blurry steam, he could vaguely see a figure beside the hot spring. What's wrong? He walked toward that person. But the moment he got close, he smelled a strong bloody smell. More importantly, there was a hint of rotting smell in this bloody stench. Jiang Yuqing couldn't be more familiar with this smell. Isn't this the strange smell in the mystic forest? This smell was nauseating. Jiang Yuqing suppressed his disgust and walked forward. Xianxia was wearing 2 layers of unlined clothing as she lay at the edge of the hot spring. Her hands were tightly clawing the ground. Hearing Jiang Yuqing's voice, she moved with much difficulty and spoke. Yuqing. Her voice was hoarse and her breathing was weak. Jiang Yuqing went forward and carefully held her shoulders. Why are you lying here? Everyone is waiting for you. His voice stopped abruptly. This was because there was actually a pool of blood in the hot spring nearby. Wretch. Xianxuan's body trembled and she vomited blood again. But this wasn't what shocked Jiang Yuqing the most. He swept his gaze across and shockingly discovered that Xianxuan's exposed arm had actually become much thinner. I just didn't see her for half a day, but her arm has actually become so skinny. There's clearly a problem. He was very shocked and was about to ask when he saw a faint dark green light flowing under her skin. It was very strange. That light, isn't that light exactly the same as the one I saw in the mystic forest? What's going on with your body? Asked Jiang Yuqing anxiously. It's no wonder Xianxuan hurriedly called me over. This kind of situation was really too strange. Xianxuan grabbed his hand and started crying in despair. I don't know either. At first she just wanted to wash up, but not long later she realized that something was wrong with her body. That dark green light was flowing all over her body, and her body started to become thinner at a visible speed. It was as if her muscles, bones, and flesh were all being swallowed by this thing. Xianxuan had never seen such a situation before, and she was scared to death at that time. Seeing that things were going out of control, she could only get Chan Yi to call Jiang Yuqing over. Yuqing, you have to save me. You must save me. Xianxuan hugged his arm and cried in pain and panic as she begged non-stop. Jiang Yuqing's pupils constricted. The current Xianxuan's appearance was completely ruined, and her body was also very skinny. He felt very uncomfortable hugging her, and she looked neither human nor ghost. If it weren't for his strong mental fortitude, he really couldn't help but fling her away. The spot where Xianxuan hugged him tightly seemed to have lice, and it was very itchy and uncomfortable. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath in before asking, Did you make use of that mother tree in the mystic forest? Mystic forest. It was silent in the dark space. Chu Liyue's force surrounded him and he was clearly stronger than before. After digesting the swallowing force again, Chu Liyue slowly opened his eyes. His gaze became even brighter and brighter and his body became much lighter. His entire body seemed to be filled with abundant energy. Taizu couldn't help but praise him. Lu Yu, hang in there for a while longer and you should be able to successfully break through to peak stage 5. Chu Liyue smiled brightly, then looked opposite him and squinted his eyes. A dark green light appeared out of nowhere and surged toward the 2 Tian baby. Chu Liyue teased him. Where did you get such mottled energy from? You want this too? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 779. That ball of green light stopped in front of the 2 Tian baby. For a moment it was very awkward. The corners of Chu Liyue's lips curled up slightly, and a sly light flashed in his eyes. This was the 2 Tian baby's divine realm and everything was under its control. From previous experience, it was obvious that it could absorb energy from the outside. The mystic forest's energy had been exhausted, and there was still the Red Moon Desert and Mirror Lake next to it. The energy contained in these two places was much more than that in the mystic forest. If it persisted and continued to absorb energy from the outside world at a speed faster than Chu Liyue's absorption and digestion speed, then it would be very disadvantageous for Chu Liyue. Moreover, this ball of energy looked really mottled and messy. Chu Liyue didn't like it and would rather not have it. It would be a waste for it to be paired with the 2 Tian baby. Taizu coughed. There were probably not many people who dared to talk to the 2 Tian baby like that. Originally, that energy was taken by the 2 Tian baby, and there was nothing wrong with using it. However, after Chu Liyue said that, it seemed to have become cheap. Even he felt that it was a little strange. Sure enough, after a short silence, the ball of light dissipated with a bang. Chu Liyue nodded in satisfaction. That's more like it. Taizu's mouth twitched. Sensing the dangerous aura emitted by the 2 Tian baby, Taizu was very worried. This lass is really relying on that water curtain to do whatever she wants. Chu Liyue didn't take this to heart and turned to look at the hourglass. It seemed that a few months had passed. For the people outside it was actually only a few days. I wonder how Hong Yu and Xiaozhou are doing. I've been trapped here so I have no way to contact them. Thinking about it, they must be very worried. If only someone could help me pass a message. Thinking of this, Chu Liyue suddenly remembered the voices she heard before. One of them even called out her name clearly. Those people could help. Chu Liyue looked up. It was pitch black. He couldn't see or hear anything. Those voices hadn't appeared for a long time. She retracted her gaze regretfully as a trace of doubt flashed through her mind. She didn't remember knowing such people, but they seemed to be very familiar with her. She pursed her lips slightly. She vaguely felt that she had forgotten something. But she didn't even know what stage of memory she had forgotten. This was because there was no missing time in her mind. As far as she was concerned, her memory was complete. This caused a ripple in her heart. Also, who was that black-clothed man on the cliff? Red Moon Desert. The scorching sun hung high in the sky, almost blinding people. The sand was boiling hot as if it had been roasted by charcoal. Heat waves surged and the nearby void was slightly distorted due to the heat. There was no wind in the surroundings at all. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that such a place could roast people into jerky. In the vast and boundless desert there was not a single person. However, on the undulating sand dunes, there was a muscular figure that was quickly passing by. It was Xianxia. If someone looked down from above, they would be able to see that the sand dunes in the Red Moon Desert were arranged according to a certain pattern. And as time passed, these sand dunes were also silently changing. It was as if an invisible hand was controlling everything, changing the position of these sand dunes at will. And Xianxia was running back and forth at the top of these sand dunes. According to that person's instructions, it had to run continuously here, and it could only land at the top of the sand dunes every time, leaving at most 2 paw prints. This matter seems simple, but in reality, it consumed a lot of energy and strength. This was because the vast Red Moon Desert was under the control of the other party. In the past few days, Xianxia had run around the entire Red Moon Desert several times. Its originally snow-white fur was also stained with a layer of yellow sand, turning into a dirty yellowish-white color. After running for a long time, Xianxia's strength was almost exhausted. It raised its head to take a look. There were no clouds in the sky and the sun was shining brightly. And there were sand dunes that kept appearing in front of it. Even a divine beast couldn't withstand such torment. You're too slow. A baby-like voice suddenly sounded in its ears. Xianxia was shocked and forced to speed up again. It had no choice. Although those people could only come out during the night of the Red Moon Desert, it was still easy for them to monitor it. Xianxia's heart was bitter. For the 10,000th time, it regretted signing a contract with Xiao. For the 10,000th time, it fantasized about running away from home. Once it was done with the punishment here, it would definitely not go back. Wanted to follow Tu Liwa. Sob, 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 I miss that warm embrace. Xianxia accepted its fate and ran forward. Debao, aren't you too cruel? Look at how tired little Xianxia is. His fine fur was about to turn into withered grass. Fih. Lan Zhan said with some disdain. If you want to say who's wrong, it's Xiao. Why are you venting your anger on little Xianxia? Dugu Maobao sneered coldly. Can't you guess why Xiao sent it here himself? If we don't teach it a lesson, Xiao will think that we're easy to bully. Lan Zhan thought for a moment. Anyway, don't let Xiao off just because you tortured little Xianxia. When the time comes, you can deal with it however you want. As long as little Xianxia didn't make up for it. Diwu Zhangzi said slowly. You just don't like Xiao, right? When he comes, can't you do it yourself? Lan Zhan sighed. Do you think I'm stupid? If I touch Xiao, will the girl let me go if she knows? I'm different from Debao. No one will think you're mute if you don't speak. It doesn't matter if I'm mute or not. The main thing is to look good. Dugu Maobao forcibly suppressed its anger. Such a big thing happened to the girl. Xiao knew about it and didn't report it. It's his fault. Moreover, that divine beast by his side was almost spoiled by him. Do you really think he sent it here just to ask for forgiveness? This kid wants me to help him tame the beast. Xiao, who had just walked out of the hall, sneezed again. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from love. Chapter 780. Tianling Palace. Huayang Palace. Shangguanwan leaned into Jiang Yuqing's arms and tightly gripped his arm as if she was grabbing onto her last life-saving straw. Yuqing, help me. Help me. Only you can help me. She kept spitting out blood and her voice was hoarse and hopeless. She looked like a wretched ghost. Jiang Yuqing had never seen Shangguanwan like this. He suppressed the disgust in his heart and tried to push her away a little. But Shangguanwan hugged him very tightly and he couldn't ignore her. Jiang Yuqing was worried that if he overdid it, it would cause a huge shock to her, so he could only hold it in. He looked at the light flowing under Shangguanwan's skin and knitted his brows tightly. What exactly did you provoke? He originally thought that after Shangguanwan hit underground, she personally took action against those people. But he didn't expect her to use those tree roots. Thinking of Yang Qin, who chose to self-destruct previously and had a rotten and bloody aura on her, his face turned cold. You attacked Yang Qin previously, didn't you? Shangguanwan felt very guilty and shifted her gaze. I only borrowed a little of her strength. But I also don't know what those tree roots are. To Jiang Yuqing, Shangguanwan was really too stupid to treat Yang Qin in Xiling City. So many eyes are watching her openly and secretly. Once someone finds out, she can't even keep her status as the third princess, let alone the throne. But now that Yang Qin is already dead, there's no point in pursuing this. Once outsiders see Shangguanwan's current appearance, they will definitely think of Yang Qin back then. So no matter what, I have to think of a way to solve Shangguanwan's problem. Jiang Yuqing held his breath and looked at Shangguanwan solemnly. Sit up first and give me your hand. When Shangguanwan heard this, her eyes suddenly lit up. She quickly struggled to sit up in his arms and reached out her hand. Jiang Yuqing glanced at it and saw a hand as thin as a skeleton. It was stained with messy blood stains which made him nauseous. Jiang Yuqing forced himself to restrain himself. He stretched out his hand and slowly placed it against Shangguanwan's as origin power surged around him. Gradually, there seemed to be a layer of black mist spreading out from his eyes, gradually dyeing them black. Even the sclera of his eyes had turned black. At first glance, they looked like two dark holes. It was a little horrifying. A stream of origin power slowly entered Shangguanwan's body. More than half of her yuan meridian had been repaired. so the transition of origin power could be considered smooth. At this moment the dark green light had already flowed to her shoulder. Jiang Yuqing controlled his own power and approached bit by bit. A trace of pain appeared on Shang Guanwan's face. Wherever Jiang Yuqing's power passed, it was as if it was being forcefully cut by a knife. If there were outsiders present at this moment, they would be shocked to discover that the aura of the origin power that Jiang Yuqing had sent out was clearly stronger than his current realm. Logically speaking, this was definitely not a power that he could use by himself. However, Shang Guanwan seemed to have already known this. She was not the least bit surprised by this. Instead, she forcefully endured the pain. When that power slowly approached Shang Guanwan's shoulder and was about to clash with the dark green light, the latter suddenly exploded. Bang! Following the explosion, Shang Guanwan's body shook, and flesh and blood splattered from her shoulder. Ah! She was momentarily caught off guard and was shocked by this sudden change. Fear and panic instantly surged into her heart. After a short moment of being stunned, the intense pain spread. Shang Guanwan was in so much pain that her face turned pale, and she almost fainted. Jiang Yuqing, who was nearby, was also shocked. This explosion happened too suddenly, so much so that he did not even have time to react or dodge before he was directly knocked down by the tyrannical and violent airflow. His chest shook and a strong smell of blood surged up between his lips and teeth. However, he did not have time to care about his injuries and immediately looked up. Shang Guanwan fell to the ground. Her left shoulder had completely festered and turned into a bloody mess. If it had been a little more to the side, her entire arm would probably have been broken. As for that dark green light, it had already dissipated without a trace. Jiang Yuqing was still in shock and his heart was beating crazily. No. What exactly happened? Shang Guanwan's painful moans pulled Jiang Yuqing back from his thoughts. He suppressed the surging blood in his chest and walked towards Shang Guanwan. Shang Guanwan was lying on the ground, covered in blood. However, some of the energy that had been devoured earlier seemed to have returned. Her body, which was originally so thin that only bones were left, was gradually recovering. Although she still looked a lot thinner than before, it was still much better than her skeleton-like appearance. Shang Guanwan's mind was blank. Looking at Jiang Yuqing, who appeared in front of her, she opened her mouth but could not speak. Jiang Yuqing frowned. With Shang Guanwan like this, it was impossible for her to go out and meet anyone. There were still so many people waiting in Minghua Palace, and they could not afford to waste time. He took out a jade bottle and poured out 2 pills. One was for himself and the other was for Shang Guanwan. This is to regulate your blood and qi and nourish your body. Take it first. Also, according to your current condition, you can't go to Minghua Palace anymore. Later let Chani come in to take care of you. Also, send Sua Mingxi into the palace to check on your injuries. You must not leave any problems. Shang Guanwan opened her mouth and looked at him with a sorrowful gaze. I will handle Minghua Palace. Tell the public that you were injured while getting medicine for His Majesty and need to recuperate. In a short period of time, Jiang Yuqing had already made his decision. Shang Guanwan wanted to say something but hesitated. In the end, she nodded with difficulty to express her agreement. She also understood that this was the only way in the current situation. Then Jiang Yuqing turned and left. Shang Guanwan closed her eyes in despair and resentment. She could clearly feel that more than half of the strength that she had accumulated with great difficulty had been used up after this torture. She just wanted to repair her Yuan meridian and become an expert again. Why was it so difficult? That light, what was going on? After Jiang Yuqing handed Shang Guanwan to Chani, he returned to Minghua Palace. Everyone thought that Shang Guanwan would come with Jiang Yuqing this time, but in the end, they only saw Jiang Yuqing alone. They could not help but look at each other with doubtful expressions. Jiang Yuqing walked in front of everyone with a trace of worry and concern. I'm afraid the third princess won't be able to come today. She was injured while getting medicine for His Majesty. Now she has to rest in bed for a few days. Please forgive her. After a short period of silence, Xianxia asked, what kind of medicine is it that the third princess risked her life to get it? Jiang Yuqing paused. Dancing Lotus. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 781. Everyone was shocked. Xianxia was stunned for a moment before continuing to ask. Dancing lotus? Is it the legendary dancing lotus that can revive a dead person? Jiang Yuqing nodded. Yes. If not for this, the third princess wouldn't be willing to take the risk to retrieve it. Song Wan said excitedly. The third princess is really filial to His Majesty. After retrieving this dancing lotus, His Majesty's health will definitely improve. Jiang Yuqing frowned imperceptibly and his tone was slightly cold. Sect Master Song is right, but it's a pity that we haven't successfully retrieved the dancing lotus. Song Wan's face instantly flushed red. Many people around couldn't help but laugh secretly. He flattered the wrong horse. He's really something. Song Wan felt that he had lost face and muttered. I think that the dancing lotus is a rare treasure in the world. It must be very difficult to retrieve it successfully. I thought too simply. Jiang Yuqing couldn't be bothered to argue with him so much. He nodded and said, "You're right. What you said is correct. The dancing lotus is indeed extremely difficult to approach. Elder Qiushi died because of that dancing lotus." The moment he said that, the huge Minghua palace instantly quietened down. Everyone's expression changed simultaneously. They didn't expect the matter to be so troublesome. Elder Qiushi was an elder of the royal family and was naturally very powerful. Even he couldn't do it and died just like that. It could be seen how dangerous that dancing lotus was. That dancing lotus grows in the mirror lake of the Dahuang swamp. Originally we wanted to pluck it and bring it back for His Majesty to use. However, that mirror lake is a little strange and even Elder Qiushi wasn't spared. Thus, we were worried about the safety of the soldiers and disciples of the various families and sects, so we made a prompt decision and chose to return. Jiang Yuqing's words not only explained the reason for Shangguanwan's injury but also explained the reason for everyone's sudden return. This time they returned in a hurry and would definitely cause a huge commotion in the entire Xiling city. There would be countless guesses and rumors in the open and in the dark. Jiang Yuqing didn't want to be criticized because of this matter. I see. No wonder Her Highness the Third Princess brought her men back so quickly. She did it out of consideration for everyone's safety. What's so strange about Mirror Lake? Why is it so dangerous? After a short period of silence, everyone started to discuss. Obviously, the various guesses and complaints about Shangguanwan and the others from before had quietly dissipated at this time. In such a situation, who could reprimand them? Jiang Yuqing looked around and waited for everyone to finish talking before he said, "What's the matter? Therefore we came back this time. On one hand, we don't want to cause unnecessary casualties. On the other hand, we want to find a few experts to go to the Great Desolate Swamp again and join forces to retrieve the dancing lotus." The hall fell silent. What do you all think? After Jiang Yuqing asked, no one spoke for a while. Everyone secretly exchanged glances with each other as they pondered. Without a doubt, a heavenly treasure like the dancing lotus was fatally attractive to anyone. But at the same time they had to consider their safety. Even Elder Qiushi had died there. How many people could guarantee that they would be able to return safe and sound? Most importantly, even if they succeeded in retrieving the dancing lotus, they would still have to give it to His Majesty in the end. What could they get? Everyone present was an important figure of high status and each of them was very shrewd. They either represented the entire clan or the entire sect. Something happened to them who knew how many people would be implicated. Therefore, even if they were indeed loyal to His Majesty when it came to their own lives, they still had to think carefully. No one spoke. The air seemed to have frozen. Jiang Yuqing frowned imperceptibly. He had expected that a large portion of these people might not be willing to take this risk, but he didn't expect that everyone would be like this. He hesitated for a moment and said, "I know that this trip is dangerous and that everyone has concerns, but that dancing lotus is simply too important to His Majesty. In addition to the corresponding reward apart from the dancing lotus, the other herbs found will also belong to each of you." Many people's eyes lit up. If that was the case, they could still consider it. The reason why Elder Qiushi died was that he was careless at that time. Secondly, he went alone with no one to support him. You are all the top powerhouses of the Tianling dynasty. If you all join forces, it shouldn't be a problem to take the dancing lotus, right? There was no doubt that Jiang Yuqing's words made many people's minds waver. Since the dancing lotus had appeared in Mirror Lake, there might be other treasures. As long as they were fully prepared, even if they really couldn't get it, they would still have the ability to escape. They wouldn't follow in Elder Qiuxi's footsteps. At this moment a voice sounded. I'm willing to go. Hearing this, everyone looked over and found that the person who spoke was actually Yuqi Song. Everyone including Jiang Yuqing was shocked. Everyone present was likely to go, but they felt that Yuqi Song was the least likely to go. There were only a few people left in the Chongshu Pavilion now, and they were all relying on him, the pavilion master. If something happened to him, wouldn't the Chongshu Pavilion be completely finished? Besides, Chu Luiyue and the others had died in the Dahuang swamp, and he actually wanted to go to that sad place. What was he thinking? However, facing everyone's doubtful eyes, Yuqi Song's expression was calm and indifferent, and he didn't care. He had made up his mind. Xianxia touched his chin. As a celestial physician, I naturally have to go and see what the dancing lotus looks like. I'll go too. At this time, Chu Luiyue naturally didn't know that in Xiling City, thousands of miles away, a group of people was planning to come to the Dahuang swamp again. She was trapped in this small place and the only thing she could do was cultivate. Taizu glanced at the hourglass beside him. Counting the time, less than 10 days had passed outside. However, more than half a year had passed here. Chu Luiyue cultivated day and night here as if she had entered a meditative state. At first, Taizu was worried that Chu Luiyue wouldn't be used to staying here for a long time. However, he didn't expect her to be so determined. She said that she wanted to cultivate, but she only did this one thing wholeheartedly. If it were someone else, they might have felt bored and depressed long ago. However, Chu Luiyue didn't. Even Taizu was amazed by her patience. He couldn't help but be curious. I wonder how powerful Chu Luiyue will be when she comes out of here. Time passed slowly. Qin Yi and the others who were waiting in the mystic forest had already endured for nearly half a month. At the start they would still guess when Chu Luiyue would come out, but they basically wouldn't say anything now. The only thing they could do was to cultivate while waiting silently. However, this tranquility was quickly broken. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from LoveWeb. Chapter 782. Someone entered the mystic forest again. Qin Yi didn't know about the situation at Mirror Lake and Red Moon Desert. However, he stayed in the mystic forest for a long time and left traces in many places. If anything were to happen, he would be able to sense it. Someone's here. In the quiet atmosphere, Qin Yi's words were very prominent. The few of them looked over. Lei Laosi frowned. Who else would come at this time? Even if someone barged into Dahuang swamp, they probably wouldn't come in after seeing the mystic forest's current state, right? Qin Yi's expression became serious. The other party isn't weak. Seeing his reaction, the few of them became serious. Big brother, how many of them are here? Should be 5. Qin Yi narrowed his long and narrow eyes. What he didn't say was that the other party's aura was very familiar. Lei Laosi scratched his head. Why don't I go and test them first? No need. They won't come here. Qin Yi paused and stopped Lei Laosi's actions. At the same time, the few figures that entered the forest not long ago stopped. It was Jiang Yuqing and the others who came again. Other than him, there were 4 other people. They were Yuqi Song, Jianxia, Song Wan, and Grand Tutor, Xiahou Rong. There was no need to explain why the first few people were here. Xiahou Rong was the Grand Tutor and had always been doted on by His Majesty. In addition, he wasn't weak himself, so logically speaking, he was one of the people who should come. This time, Mu Qinghe didn't bring the Black Cavalry along. There were too many casualties previously, so he still had many things to settle. Also, Dahuang Swamp was extremely dangerous and normal people would only die if they came here. Not only would they not be of help, but they might even become a burden. The few of them stood still and looked at the scene in front of them with complicated expressions. Jiang Yuqing said, "You've all seen it. As you can see, the mystic forest has been reduced to such a state. It was very dangerous back then." Originally, he wanted to take them directly to Mirror Lake, but Yuqi Song said that she wanted to have a look at the mystic forest, so they came. Anyone could guess that Yuqi Song still wanted to look for his disciples. Song Wan originally didn't want to agree, but the others didn't say anything, so he could only follow along. Jianxia looked around. "Elder Song, I heard that Hong Yu and the rest are still in the mystic forest. Why don't we look for them? Then go to Mirror Lake? It won't take much time anyway. Anyway, it was better to find as many as possible. It was always good to have one more survivor." Since he had already said so much, who could say no? Song Wan was very unhappy and looked at Jiang Yuqing. They had come here to look for the dancing lotus, but why had they come to the mystic forest to look for someone? She originally thought that Jiang Yuqing would speak up to stop her, but to her surprise, even Jiang Yuqing agreed to it. Helpless, Song Wan could only swallow his words. Jiang Yuqing slowly clenched his fists in his sleeves, and a trace of nervousness arose in his heart. His rationality told him that it was impossible for Chu Liwei to still be alive, but deep in his heart, there seemed to be an indescribable desire. If she's really still alive, a bright and dazzling smile appeared in his mind. Shangguan Wan had already become like that, and he didn't know if she could recover. He didn't know when it started, but when facing Shangguan Wan, the remaining patience in his heart had already been exhausted. He suddenly thought of something and looked at Yuqi Song, seemingly unintentionally asking, "Elder Song, did anyone inform Chu Liu's fiancé about what happened here?" Digression 6 p.m. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 783. Everyone was shocked. Jian Shai froze for a moment before he continued to ask, "Whirling Lotus? Is it the legendary Whirling Lotus that can bring the dead back to life?" Jiang Yuqing nodded his head. Yes. If it weren't for this, the third princess wouldn't have taken the risk to retrieve it. Song Wan said excitedly, "The third princess is truly filial to His Majesty. If we retrieve the Whirling Lotus, His Majesty's health will definitely improve." Jiang Yuqing's brows furrowed imperceptibly. His tone was slightly cold. "Leader Song is right. However, it's a pity that the Whirling Lotus hasn't been retrieved yet." Song Wan's face suddenly turned the color of a pig's liver. Many people around them couldn't help but laugh secretly. His bootlicking had failed miserably and he was truly to blame. Song Wan felt that he had lost face. He mumbled, "The Whirling Lotus is a rare treasure in the world. Must be very difficult to retrieve it. I was too naive." Jiang Yuqing was too lazy to argue with him. He nodded his head and said, "You're right. The Whirling Lotus is indeed extremely difficult to get close to. Elder Qiushi died to retrieve the Whirling Lotus." As soon as he said this, the huge clear flower palace suddenly quieted down. Everyone's expression changed. They didn't expect the situation to be so troublesome. Elder Qiushi was an elder of the royal family. His strength was undeniable. Even he didn't manage to do it and died. This showed how dangerous the Whirling Lotus was. The Whirling Lotus grows in the Mirror Lake of the Great Desolation Swamp. Originally, we wanted to pluck it and bring it back for His Majesty to use. However, that Mirror Lake was a little strange. Even Elder Qiushi couldn't escape. Therefore, we were worried about the safety of the soldiers and the disciples of the various sects, so we made a prompt decision and chose to come back. Jiang Yuqing's words not only explained the reason for Shangguan Wan's injury, but also the reason why everyone suddenly came back. This time they came back in a hurry. It was bound to cause a great commotion in the entire West Hill city. Who knew how many guesses and rumors would appear in the open and in the dark? Jiang Yuqing didn't want to be criticized because of this. "I see. No wonder Her Highness the Third Princess brought people back so quickly. She was thinking about everyone's safety. What's so strange about that Mirror Lake? Why is it so dangerous?" After a short period of silence, everyone began to discuss among themselves. Obviously, all the guesses and complaints about Shangguan Wan and the others had quietly disappeared. Under such circumstances, who could reprimand them? Jiang Yuqing looked around, and when everyone was almost done speaking, he said, "Therefore we came back this time not to cause unnecessary casualties. On the other hand, we wanted to find a few experts to go to the Great Desolate Swamp again and work together to retrieve the Whirling Lotus." The main hall fell silent. "What do you think?" After Jiang Yuqing asked, no one spoke for a while. Everyone secretly exchanged glances with each other, each of them thinking. There was no doubt that a treasure like the Whirling Lotus was fatally attractive to everyone. But at the same time they had to consider their safety. Even Elder Qiushi died there, so how many people could guarantee that they would be able to return safely and without worry? Most importantly, even if they took the risk and successfully retrieved the Whirling Lotus, they would still have to offer it to His Majesty. What could they gain? Everyone present was a big shot of high status and every one of them was very astute. They either represented the entire clan or the entire sect. If something happened to them, it was unknown how many people would be implicated. Therefore, even if they were loyal and devoted to His Majesty, they still had to consider things that involved their own lives. No one spoke. The air seemed to have frozen. Jiang Yuqing's brows furrowed imperceptibly. He had expected that a large portion of these people would not be willing to take the risk, but he did not expect everyone to be like this. He hesitated for a moment and said, "I know that this trip is dangerous and everyone has their concerns, but the whirling lotus is simply too important to His Majesty. Apart from the corresponding reward, apart from the whirling lotus, all the other herbs found will belong to everyone." Many people's eyes lit up. If that was the case, they could still consider it. Elder Qiushi died because he was careless at the time, and because he went alone without anyone to support him. Everyone here is the most powerful cultivator in Tianling dynasty. If you all work together, surely it won't be a problem to take down the whirling lotus? Jiang Yucheng's words undoubtedly caused many people's hearts to waver. Since the whirling lotus could appear in Mirror Lake, there might be other treasures as well. As long as they made sufficient preparations, even if they really couldn't get it, they still had the ability to escape and wouldn't follow in Elder Qiushi's footsteps. Right at this moment, a voice rang out. "This old man is willing to go." Hearing that, everyone looked over and discovered that the person who spoke was actually Yuqi Song. Everyone, including Jiang Yuqing, was taken aback. Everyone present could possibly go except for Yuqi Song. They felt that he was the least likely to go. There were only so few people left in Clear Void Pavilion now, and they were all relying on him, the pavilion master, to support them. Once something happened to him, wouldn't this Clear Void Pavilion be completely finished? Besides, Chu Luiyue and the others had all died in the Great Desolate Swamp, and he actually wanted to go to that sad place. What on earth was he thinking? However, in the face of everyone's doubtful gazes, Yuqi Song's expression was calm and indifferent. He had made up his mind. Jianxia rubbed his chin. "As the heavenly doctor, I naturally have to go and see what that whirling lotus looks like. I'll go too." At this moment, Chu Luiyue naturally did not know that in West Hill City, thousands of miles away, there was a group of people plotting to rush to the Great Desolate Swamp again. She was trapped in this small place and the only thing she could do was cultivate. The founding father glanced at the hourglass beside him. Calculating the time, less than 10 days had passed in the outside world. However, more than half a year had passed in this place. Here Chu Luiyue cultivated day and night. Her entire person seemed to have entered a meditative state. At first, the founding father was worried that Chu Luiyue would not be used to staying here for a long time. However, he did not expect her to be so determined. When she said that she wanted to cultivate, she wholeheartedly focused on this one thing. If it was someone else, they would have already felt bored and depressed. However, Chu Luiyue did not. Even the great ancestor was amazed by his patience. He could not help but be curious. He did not know how strong Chu Luiyue would be when she left this place. Time passed slowly. Qin Yi and the others who were waiting in the illusory fog forest had already endured for nearly half a month. At first, they would guess when Chu Luiyue would come out. However, they basically did not say anything now. The only thing they could do was to cultivate while waiting in silence. However, this tranquility was soon broken. Mobile users, please browse and read. For a better reading experience, please visit the website. Chapter 784. Yuqi Song glanced at Jiang Yuqing strangely and frowned slightly. Why did he suddenly mention Lu Yu's fiancé at this time? Not to mention that Chu Luiyue's situation had not been thoroughly investigated. Even if something really happened, her fiancé was not in West Hill now. How could he inform him? Not yet. Yuqi Song's expression was indifferent. Why did you suddenly mention him? Jiang Yuqing sized up the other party's expression and knew that the other party had doubts in his heart. Speaking of which, it's quite a coincidence. I've met that person once before. I heard that he is a prince of country Yaochen. When he was in Yaochen, the two of them were engaged. However, he doesn't seem to be in good health. I was just thinking that if he suddenly found out about what happened here, I'm afraid he wouldn't be able to bear it. I didn't expect eldest young Master Jiang to know so much about these things. You know almost better than me, his master. Yuqi Song seemed to say unintentionally. Jiang Yuqing's expression stiffened. It was indeed a little strange for him to know about these things with his status. Oh, Elder Song, don't misunderstand. I don't mean anything else. You also know that Chu Luyue is very famous in West Hill City. There must be many people who are very curious about everything about her. Even I am no exception. Jiang Yuqing straightforwardly admitted to this point. Because there was nothing to criticize. A prodigy who was outstanding in the entire West Hill would definitely attract a lot of attention. It would be strange if Jiang Yuqing did not know anything about her. As for her fiancé, I met him by coincidence and asked about him. Elder Song, you won't mind, right? Yuqi Song's expression was calm. Eldest young Master Jiang has his reasons for doing things. These words made Jiang Yuqing a little flustered, as if they were mocking him. But he still endured it. Let's not talk about this anymore. Let's find them first. Jiang Yuqing did not get any useful information from Yuqi Song, so he simply did not say anything more. Yuqi Song was an old fox and not easy to deal with. As for Chu Liu's so-called fiancé, he was just a sickly person, so why should he care about him? The next time they met he would deal with it directly. This small interlude came to an end. They continued to walk into the forest. However, after about an hour they still did not see anyone. Xianxia frowned and looked at a withered tree in front of him. Wait, have we been here before? Yuqi Song said. You noticed it too? Xianxia nodded and looked around. It seems like we've been running around in circles for the past hour. No wonder he couldn't find anything. Jiang Yuqing was stunned. Been here before? Are you sure? Xianxia snorted and lifted his chin. I took a closer look at the patterns on the bark of that tree earlier. I'm sure that it has circled back. Xiahou Rong was shocked. Does this mean that we're going around in circles? The few of them fell silent. The situation couldn't be more clear. It was fine if one person saw wrongly, but since Xianxia and Yuqi Song said so, there must be a problem. Even Song Wan was frowning. Jiang Yuqing also looked around in confusion. Strange, this didn't happen when we came here before. They originally thought that the miasma and tree roots were the most dangerous things in the mystic forest, but they didn't expect to encounter such trouble. Someone seems to have set up a Xian formation here, but at the same time, they also used some Chimenduanjia to block the people who came in. Xianxia murmured and looked at Yuqi Song. Elder Song, among us, you're the only one who has some research on this. Can you see anything? Yuqi Song specialized in celestial physician, but he also had some understanding of these strange things. The few of them looked at him. Yuqi Song was silent for a moment and shook his head. The other party is proficient in this and has set up a meticulous plan. I can't solve it either. Hearing his words, the others were all stunned. Xianxia couldn't hide his disappointment. Then won't we be trapped here forever? What about the children? Yuqi Song turned around and pointed in a direction. That's the direction we came from. As long as we walk in that direction we can leave this place. However, it'll be extremely difficult to enter. Jiang Yuqing's eyes suddenly moved. Could this be Qin Yi and the rest's plan? Who's Qin Yi? Xiahou Rong asked. The various aristocratic families didn't send anyone over, so they didn't know much about what happened here. Jiang Yuqing gave a simple explanation. Yuqi Song looked down thoughtfully and didn't say anything. Xianxia asked curiously. If it's really them, why do they have to do this? Previously, Zhu Hong and the rest said that Qin Yi and the rest treated the children quite well. You can't judge a book by its cover. Song Wan interrupted him and mocked him. If they're really decent people, why would they stay in Da Huang Swamp for such a long time for no reason? Besides, Chu Liyue snatched the 9-colored heavenly pheasant that they've been protecting. They might harbor a grudge and do something. Xianxia glanced at him in frustration. This Song Wan really can't say anything decent. He's just afraid that others are better than him. My disciples have suffered heavy casualties, so I can't let everyone else be the same. Yuqi Song suddenly said, Let's go. Let's leave first and head to Mirror Lake since the other party doesn't want us to enter. Jiang Yuqing was a little hesitant and wanted to say something. However, since even Yuqi Song didn't intend to continue walking in, he naturally didn't have a say. The group quickly returned the way they came from. After walking for a long distance, Yuqi Song finally heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. He turned around with a deep gaze. So that person is actually back. Jiang Yuqing probably didn't expect this even in his dreams, right? But a fingernail-sized fragment fell from the crystal again. At this point, most of the crystal that was originally the size of 2 palms had been swallowed, and only the centermost piece was left. The 2 Tian baby was wrapped in it and only a thin layer of shell was left on the outside. It was as though it would shatter with a knock. Of course, this energy was too massive. After Chu Liyue swallowed it, she didn't completely convert it into her own energy. Most of it was still stored in the water droplet. Despite so, Chu Liyue's abilities still increased by a lot. After staying in this space for nearly a year, she finally touched the barrier of peak stage 5. Chu Liyue melted and swallowed that fragment. She had done this countless times and could be said to be as smooth as flowing water. Then she looked at the opposite side. As long as she peeled off one more piece, the 2 Tian baby would be exposed. The heaven-wrecking holy seed seemed to have realized this as well and began to become restless. The surrounding space also started to vibrate faintly. Chu Liyue had a thought. Crack. A crack appeared. A vast and majestic ancient aura erupted from it. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 785. Song Wan flew on his sword and flew over Mirror Lake. Looking down, it was a large piece of floating ice reflecting a cold luster. Looking from here, he could see that the ice layer was actually spreading outwards with the dancing lotus as the center. The closer it was to the dancing lotus, the thicker and smoother the ice layer was. Correspondingly, the further it was, the more fragmented the ice layer was. When it reached the dam where the 2 worlds met, there were only some small pieces of floating ice left. The so-called bridge made of ice didn't really connect the 2 sides. Because the distance in the middle was closer, the ice layer spread outwards and reached here first. At a glance, it did look like an ice bridge. Actually, there was still a short distance near the dam where the floating ice didn't condense. The water was sparkling, calm and clear. Song Wan walked forward carefully. Anyway, regardless of whether the ice bridge was completely connected, he wouldn't walk on it. In fact, he wouldn't even get close to her. He heard what Jiang Yuqing said just now clearly. Who knew how these floating pieces of ice appeared? There might be some danger hidden below. Just like that, he only controlled his sword and flew across the lake, approaching the dancing lotus in the middle bit by bit. Seeing Song Wan go over, Jiang Yuqing looked at the remaining people. That dancing lotus is very strange. If we work together, the chances of success might be higher. The scene of Elder Qiushi being dragged under the ice layer was still vivid in his mind. Jiang Yuqing didn't dare to guarantee that Song Wan could do much better than Elder Qiushi alone. Xiahou Rong nodded. That makes sense. There's strength in numbers. If we work together, we can take care of each other. Then he also tiptoed and walked forward. Jian Shai looked at Yuqi Song. The 2 of them exchanged glances and moved out together. Song Wan heard their conversation clearly and couldn't help but look back. Seeing that these people had indeed caught up to him, his hanging heart finally calmed down. No matter what, the more people there were, the more confidence they had. Jiang Yuqing was at the back and also followed. Originally, he didn't want to do this. After all, he had seen with his own eyes how terrifying Mirror Lake was. Moreover, his body had not fully recovered yet. There were a few wounds on his body and for some reason his recovery speed was much slower than before. If it was in the past, it would have been healed long ago. There was no need for him to worry about it at all. But now it kept going back and forth. Who knew if it was because of that tree root? However, since the seniors had already made their moves, he couldn't just stand by and watch. The few of them approached one after another. Finally, they formed a circle around the dancing lotus. It was noon and the sun was hanging high in the sky. The bright sunlight shone on the surface of the ice, reflecting rays of dazzling light. However, they did not cover their eyes. Instead, they stared at the dancing lotus in front of them. The palm-sized flower had a total of 5 petals. Every petal was a translucent pinkish-white color, as if it was carved out of crystal jade. There was a thin layer of frost on the petals, making them look cold and noble to the extreme. So this is the dancing lotus. Song Wan couldn't help but mutter softly. It was a top-notch medicinal herb that only existed in legends. It was rare to see it in 100 years. He licked his slightly cracked lips and greed and desire flashed across his eyes. He kicked with the tip of his foot, flipped his sword and instantly held it tightly in his hand. From the looks of it he clearly planned to cut it directly with his sword. Zhang Yuqing said, "Hold on." Song Wan was stunned. "What's the matter?" Zhang Yuqing looked at the sword in his hand and frowned. Back then Elder Qiushi used a sword. They were standing outside at that time and it was close to night so they couldn't see clearly. However, he remembered clearly that Elder Qiushi was indeed dragged down after using a sword. It happened in the blink of an eye. Song Wan's heart skipped a beat. He hurriedly kept his sword and looked at the dancing lotus in shock. This thing is actually so strange. If using a sword doesn't work, how do we take it? We can't use our hands, right? Wouldn't that be more dangerous? Zhang Yuqing looked at Xianxia and Yuqi Song. What do the two of you think? Both of them were celestial physician. Logically speaking, they should be more knowledgeable about this. Yuqi Song looked at the dancing lotus and sighed softly. Actually, to take this dancing lotus, it's both simple and difficult. The dancing lotus only blooms once every 500 years. Each time it blooms for 5 years. If no one plucks it within these 5 years, it will become a seed again and go through another 500-year cycle. Therefore, it's most suitable to pluck it while it's still blooming. The medicinal effects are also the best. However, the dancing lotus is a rare treasure. Also, it's different from other treasures. It usually doesn't have high-level fiends guarding it. This causes its defense and attack to be extremely strong. If you want to pluck it safely, you need to use fresh blood as a guide. Zhang Yuqing frowned. Fresh blood as a guide? What do you mean? The smell of fresh blood will cause the dancing lotus to fall into a short slumber. As long as you smear blood on it, you can reduce its danger to the minimum. Song Wan interrupted. Then this doesn't seem difficult? Jian Shai sneered. It's not difficult, but the cultivator must be at least a stage 8 warrior. Since you make it sound so easy, why don't you do it? Song Wan was very unhappy with this mocking tone. No matter what, he was still a peak stage 8 warrior. Could it be that he couldn't even take back such a small dancing lotus? What's so difficult about this? He clenched his teeth, raised his sword and slashed his palm. Scarlet blood gushed out instantly and dyed his entire palm red. Then he took a deep breath and stretched his hand forward. The dancing lotus swayed gently with the wind and didn't have any abnormalities. Song Wan calmed down and was about to grab the stem of the dancing lotus. Suddenly, the sound of something breaking through the air came from afar. Swoosh. The sound was sharp. The wind whistled. It went straight for Song Wan's glabella. Song Wan was shocked and immediately retreated while brandishing his sword. Clang. The sound of sharp weapons clashing suddenly came. Song Wan felt as if something had hit his sword harshly, and he instantly felt like he was bearing a heavy weight. His arm was directly numb from the shock. Song Wan took 2 steps back in a panic before stabilizing himself with much difficulty. He looked up in shock and anger, only to see a palm-sized piece of ice that had just split neatly from the middle and fell onto the surface of the lake. He looked down and saw that there was a missing piece on the ice layer not far away. Everyone was shocked when they saw this scene. To be able to casually use such a piece of broken ice to easily block Song Wan's attack and even gain the upper hand, the other party's ability was obvious. Song Wan's heart trembled slightly. Who? After a while, the air in the distance suddenly rippled. A tall and slender black figure walked out from within. His voice was low and casual, like the wind brushing past the strings of a zither, but it also carried a superior and unparalleled arrogance. Sorry, that's my wife's flower. Digression. I won't be adding it today. Tomorrow at 12 a.m. please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from AI Network. Chapter 786. The person was wearing a black brocade shirt and didn't have any extra accessories. His long hair was draped over his shoulders, and he had a lazy and cold aura all over his body. He wore a silver mask that covered his face. Only a pair of eyes that were as deep as the starry night was like a whirlpool that had a fatal attraction. It was as if one would unconsciously sink into it if they looked at it any longer. Seeing the person, Song Wan and the others were secretly shocked. This man's aura was extremely obscure and powerful, and he was only stronger than them. Song Wan swallowed his saliva with difficulty. Who exactly are you? Who I am isn't important. That man's voice was casual as he chuckled softly. What's important is that you can't touch this flower. He's here for the dancing lotus. They looked at each other. Song Luan frowned and couldn't help but retort. Everything has a first-come, first-served rule. We came first, so this dancing lotus naturally belongs to us. Even if you're powerful, you can't be so unreasonable, right? His tone was already very restrained. If it were someone else, Song Luan would have chased after them long ago to teach them a lesson. However, this man in black strength was unfathomable. They didn't dare to use force and could only start to reason with him. That's strange. This dancing lotus is still growing in the lake. How did it become yours? Could it be that this first-come, first-serve rule is based on who sees this dancing lotus first? That man wasn't angry. Instead, he laughed as if he heard a joke. Song Luan's face flushed red and he was a little embarrassed. He also knew that what he said just now wasn't reasonable. They came to this mirror lake first, but in reality they didn't successfully take the dancing lotus away. They didn't even touch it. It was indeed unreasonable to say that this dancing lotus was his. Song Luan wanted to continue but was silently stopped by Zhang Yuqing. Zhang Yuqing stepped forward, cupped his hands and asked very politely, I'm Zhang Yuqing. I'm Zhang Yuqing. May I know who you are? Almost everyone in the Tianling dynasty knew of Zhang Yuqing's name. His original identity as the eldest young master of the Jiang mansion was actually not worth mentioning. But because he was once the empress concubine's fiancé, he also rose with the tide and his fame increased by a lot. Zhang Yuqing introduced himself. On one hand, he hoped to know the other party's identity. On the other hand, it was a subtle deterrent. If the other party knew what was good for them, they should back off. The black-clothed man raised his eyelids slightly as a glimmer of light flashed through the depths of his eyes. You are not qualified to know who I am. He said these words very softly and indifferently, but they carried a majesty that no one dared to disobey. Zhang Yuqing was stunned. Then he felt as if his face had been slapped twice. It was burning with pain. He had never heard anyone speak to him like that before. In comparison, the other party seemed to be high and mighty while he was as lowly as an ant. His expression became somewhat unsightly and his voice also became cold. Aren't you being a little too arrogant? Even if the other party's strength was tyrannical, he couldn't be so condescending. This mirror lake was still the territory of the Tianling dynasty. Zhang Yuqing suppressed the anger in his heart and kept searching in his mind. When did the Tianling dynasty have such a person? But after thinking for a while, he still couldn't find anything. Because this black-clothed man couldn't match up to any of the top experts in his impression. Could it be that the other party was some hidden figure? Or perhaps he wasn't from the Tianling dynasty at all. This dancing lotus grows in Mirror Lake. Those who have the strength can obtain it. If you want it, feel free to come and snatch it. Zhang Yuqing said angrily. They had 5 people on their side, but the other party only had 1. No matter how strong he was, it was wishful thinking to fight 1 against 5. The black-clothed man sighed softly. My madam told me not to act rashly. Zhang Yuqing sneered in his heart. This person was most likely afraid, but he still said it in such a dignified manner. If you have changed your mind, feel free to leave now. For the sake of this dancing lotus, we won't argue with you so much. If possible, Zhang Yuqing still hoped to get rid of the other party as soon as possible. He didn't want to get involved in any trouble. The black-clothed man laughed softly and said slowly, I've already said before that the flower belongs to my madam. Don't you understand? His voice gradually turned cold, and until the last syllable, it already carried a biting, cold, murderous intent. As soon as he finished speaking, he raised his hand. It was a slender, white and well-defined hand. At first glance, it looked like it was carefully carved from white jade that was suffused with a cold light. Then his index finger gently pointed forward. Buzz. A black force flew out like a sharp arrow. The sound of breaking air was sharp. A powerful pressure suddenly descended. An indescribable sense of danger welled up in his heart. Zhang Yuqing suddenly opened his eyes wide and his pupils shrank. At this moment he seemed to have been enveloped by the murderous intent. He retreated without a second thought, wanting to use his fastest speed to escape. However, after trying, he realized that his body was already unable to move. He was actually completely controlled by the other party's pressure. No matter what, he still had the combat power of a stage 7 warrior, but in front of this man he didn't even have the right to escape. At this moment, Jiang Yuqing finally understood that the other party's strength was much stronger than they had expected. In the blink of an eye, the black origin power had already arrived in front of him. That force suddenly passed through the middle of Jiang Yuqing's chest. Blood and flesh splattered in an instant. The clothes in front of his chest were rapidly dyed red. Jiang Yuqing only felt a chill in his chest. After a short pause, intense pain engulfed him. The black-clothed man seemed a little regretful. Unfortunately, this is as far as you can go. He wanted to directly kill Jiang Yuqing, but his madam hadn't done anything yet, so he naturally had to keep him alive. Eldest young master. Seeing this situation, Song Luan and Xiahou Rong were shocked and hurriedly ran over. Eldest young master, are you okay? Everything happened too quickly just now. When that man attacked, they didn't even have time to react. By the time they realized what happened, Jiang Yuqing was already injured. Jiang Yuqing clutched his chest and warm blood flowed out. He hurriedly took out an elixir and swallowed it. For some reason there was a faint burning pain in his lower abdomen. But at this moment his chest was pierced through, and there was a bloody hole dripping with blood. He couldn't care so much. You. He opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but when he saw the black-clothed man he couldn't say anything. That pair of eyes, indifferent, cold and noble. A deep fear rose from the bottom of his heart. Suddenly, a white light flashed across Jiang Yuqing's mind, and he looked at the other party with a horrified expression. You are the Baichao buildings. You are the Baichao buildings. Chapter 787. His strength was unfathomable, his identity was mysterious, and he kept mentioning Madam. Wasn't this completely in line with the person behind 100 Herbs building that they had investigated previously? On the surface, 100 Herbs building was managed by Yu Ling, the manager, but anyone with a bit of insight could tell that 100 Herbs building had a true master. However, no one in Xiling City had ever seen this person. Even Jiang Yuqing was no exception. He had wanted to meet this mysterious person more than once, but he never had the chance. He didn't expect to meet him here. The man in black didn't seem to care about his words at all, and his fingers moved slightly. A breeze blew past and the dancing lotus swayed gracefully. A layer of transparent barrier suddenly enveloped him. Xiahou Rong wanted to approach, but he was suffocated by the powerful aura that spread out from above. They looked at each other. Now it was even more difficult to take the dancing lotus away. Song Luan asked worriedly and nervously, "Eldest young master, what should we do now?" Jiang Yuqing was seriously injured and his situation didn't look good. The remaining few of them might not be that man in black's match. Even if they worked together, it would be very difficult to take back the dancing lotus. Jiang Yuqing gritted his teeth, and his lips and teeth were filled with the thick smell of blood. His chest and abdomen were surging and his vision was turning black. His body hadn't completely recovered, and now that he was injured again, it was even more serious. For safety's sake, they should leave as soon as possible and not face this man directly. But that dancing lotus, he took a deep breath and said, "I'm fine. The dancing lotus is extremely important to Her Majesty. Please work together and take it back." Jiang Yuqing's words shocked the few of them. "Eldest young master, have you thought it through? The dancing lotus is important, but you can't ignore your body," Song Luan said anxiously. He glanced at the man in black from the corner of his eye and his heart tightened. His arm was still numb and throbbing with pain. He was certain that he was definitely not the other party's match. This man was definitely the strongest he had seen in his life. If he continued to be so forceful, perhaps all of them would suffer in the end. Jiang Yuqing naturally didn't want to give up his life. But the dancing lotus was too important. He had to find a way to wake His Majesty up. If he missed this dancing lotus, who knew how long he would have to wait for the next opportunity? He shook his head. His Majesty's health is more important. Please. At this moment the ice on the lake began to spread faster. The man in black lowered his eyes to take a look. His eyes moved slightly as he chuckled. Looks like it's almost time. He didn't want these people to see what happened next. Thinking of this, he raised his head and looked at them. Then with a slight movement of his palm, a black ball flew out from his palm. That round ball grew in the wind. In the blink of an eye, it spread into a huge net. Retreat. Xianxia made a prompt decision and retreated without hesitation. But even though they were fast, that thing was even faster. With a swoosh, they were all enveloped by the huge black net. The black net once again condensed into a sphere and rapidly retreated. Their line of sight was instantly blocked and they fell into darkness. After an unknown period of time, the darkness in front of him finally dispersed. The restraining force around them suddenly disappeared. They were finally able to look around and discovered that they had already been expelled from Dahuang's swamp. Xianxia sucked in a breath of cold air. Who exactly is that person? How can he have such means? One had to know that they had to transfer through 2 transportation arrays to enter Dahuang's swamp. But that man in black actually chased them here so easily. Xianxia knew that he couldn't do it. In fact, almost no one in the entire Tianling dynasty could do it. Yuqi Song suddenly said, although that person chased us out, he didn't kill us. Although Song Wan and Jiang Yuqing were injured, he didn't take their lives in the end. Song Wan was still all right. As for Jiang Yuqing, perhaps because he spoke a little impolitely earlier, the other party also hit him a little harder. But in the end he still spared Jiang Yuqing's life. Otherwise, with his ability, it would be easy to kill Jiang Yuqing. Xiahou Rong sighed deeply. Fortunately, Jiang Yuqing's face was pale but his eyes were very gloomy. Fortunately? What was there to be thankful for? Could it be that he had to kneel down and thank the other party for not killing him after that man in black severely injured him? He had lived for more than 20 years and had never suffered such humiliation. In other people's eyes, the other party might have let them go because he gave them a way out. But in Jiang Yuqing's eyes that wasn't the case. This only made him feel aggrieved. Angry. Resentful. He was proud by nature and was unwilling to fall behind others in any aspect. Now that he was crushed by the other party without any suspense, how could he feel comfortable? That man in black actually didn't care about them at all. Thinking of this, anger attacked his heart and he spat out another mouthful of blood as usual. Song Wan hesitated and asked, "Then what do we do now?" "Eldest young master, your body can't be delayed." At the mention of this, Jiang Yuqing was even more annoyed. It was fine that they returned without any results the last time, but this was already the second time. Moreover, they specially invited these powerful people to come together, but they still ended up with nothing. What about Her Majesty? It was getting closer and closer to his wedding with Shangguanwan. If Her Majesty didn't wake up. Just now, you said that person was from 100 Herbs Building? Yuqi Song suddenly asked. After sending those people out, the man in black walked forward and finally stood in front of the dancing lotus. He looked down and his originally cold and indifferent eyes seemed to have a layer of frost melted as slight ripples appeared. "I haven't been here for a while and you've been pestered by that thing?" His voice was low and seemed to have a trace of a lazy smile. As he spoke, he waved his sleeves lightly. The ice surface suddenly cracked. The dancing lotus swayed gently. On the stem, rays of light reflected. Looking carefully, it turned out to be a silk thread thinner than a hair wrapped around its stem. The man in black hooked his finger slightly. The thread broke apart, flew up and landed in his palm, becoming a messy ball. Looking at it like this, it could be barely seen that this thing was slightly green. A cluster of golden flames suddenly ignited in his palm. That ball was instantly burned to ashes. He said lazily, "It's fine to bully my wife, but you actually dare to cheat. You're too shameless." The ice layer on the lake began to gradually shatter. Some of the floating ice also slowly melted. On the mirror lake, the waves were sparkling and it was a quiet and peaceful scene. Suddenly, a roar broke the silence here. Roar. This sound almost shook the mountain forest and spread far and wide between heaven and earth. The man in black looked up. "Well, it seems that a certain person's recent training results are very gratifying. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network." Chapter 788. With a thought, his tall and slender figure instantly disappeared from where he stood. The sun shone brightly and shone down. The mirror lake, which gradually regained its calm, reflected the blue sky, which was very moving. The frost on the dancing lotus had unknowingly dissipated, and the translucent pink and white petals were sparkling as they moved with the wind. Not only did this roar reach the mirror lake, but the few people in the mystic forest also heard it clearly. The few people who were originally waiting all turned around with different expressions. Mu Hongyu couldn't help but ask, "What was that roar? That roar just now, what kind of magical beast was it? It must be a high-level fiend to be able to cause such a commotion, right?" Lei Laosi chuckled and looked over with an excited expression. "High-level fiend? I'm afraid it's more than that." Yi Ranran exclaimed and realized that he had lost his composure, so he hurriedly covered his mouth. Could it be another legendary fiend? Lei Laosi looked at Qin Yi. "Big brother, what do you think?" Qin Yi narrowed his eyes and replied after a while. "It's indeed a legendary fiend. However, it sounds like it came from the Red Moon Desert. The mystic forest was basically under his control. If any legendary fiend appeared here, he would definitely notice it immediately. This roar came so suddenly, so it must have come from the Red Moon Desert." However, what surprised him was that even if it was a legendary fiend, it was still shocking that its roar could travel so far from the Red Moon Desert. This legendary fiend's abilities shouldn't be underestimated. Red Moon Desert? That far? The few of them were shocked. Mu Hongyu tilted her head, and a trace of curiosity appeared on her face. Speaking of which, there are quite a lot of rumors about the Mystic Forest and Mirror Lake in Dahuang Swamp, but only the Red Moon Desert seems to be very mysterious. When we came, we only took a quick look. It was an endless golden desert with rolling heat waves. Magnificent, majestic, and majestic. Before she came, she even did some research on Dahuang Swamp and realized that the description of the Red Moon Desert was the least. After looking at it for a long time, she still couldn't figure it out. Qin Yi restrained his expression and said seriously, "You can't go there. None of you are allowed to casually approach the Red Moon Desert. If you hear anything, pretend that you didn't hear anything. Do you understand?" Mu Hongyu originally said it casually, but she didn't expect Qin Yi to instruct or warn her so seriously. She quickly straightened her back. "Got it. Red Moon Desert." It was the time of the day when the sun was at its brightest. The golden desert was boundless. The ground was boiling hot and heat waves were rolling. This place was like a huge steamer, stuffy and hot. There seemed to be flames burning under the ground. On the undulating sand dunes, a white figure was standing. It was Xianxia. In fact, it had already turned into an earthy yellow color, and its entire body was dirty. Compared to before, it had lost a lot of weight. However, the aura on its body was much stronger than before. It didn't stop to rest as it continued to run through the vast desert. Finally, it reached the standard and was able to rest for a while. Xianxia could not help but let out a long howl. She looked at the sand dunes in the desert with tears in her eyes. "It's alive." A tall and straight black figure gradually appeared in front of it. Xianxia's tears hung at the corners of its eyes, but they could not fall. It was very awkward. As I placed all my attention on training, I didn't notice that my master actually came. A baby-like voice slowly sounded. "You still dare to come?" That man took off his mask and revealed a noble and devilish face. It was Rongxiu. Digression: 6 o'clock mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 789. Rongxiu chuckled as if he did not hear the dissatisfaction and murderous intent in his words. He nodded slightly. "Greetings to the 3 seniors. It has been a long time since we last met. You seem to be more energetic than before." Whoosh! A cloud of yellow sand suddenly swept up from the ground. It transformed into a long sword and pierced towards Rongxiu. The scorching hot air was instantly torn apart by a black hole. A biting cold attacked. It went straight for Rongxiu's glabella. Rongxiu looked up slightly with a calm expression. His deep phoenix eyes were as pure and unfathomable as the starry night. His cold and undisciplined eyes finally flashed with a trace of seriousness. He held a long silver sword in his hand. Immediately, the sword rose. The sword fell. Whoosh! This sword movement was extremely simple. There were no fancy moves. It only gathered a terrifying force and fell straight down. The sword light flew out. It broke through the air. 2 streaks of sword energy met the attack head-on. The hot golden sand was like a hurricane that swept past, and the yellow sand flew everywhere. 2 deep grooves appeared on the sand. Clang! A crisp sound of collision was heard. The two streaks of sword energy transformed into countless streaks of light. A violent aura erupted from the middle and swept wildly in all directions. Seeing this, Xianxia immediately buried its head in its paws. It had been here for so many days. It did not learn anything else, but it had trained its instinct to avoid the wind and sand. Although it was already covered in dust, its master was here after all. If it could save it, it would do its best to save it. Xianxia's fur danced wildly in the wind. Fortunately, its body had become much stronger recently and it was still very stable in the wind. After a while, the waves gradually calmed down. Xianxia crawled out from a pile of sand. Its body shook violently as it looked at its master. Zhou was still standing in the same spot. His feet sank half an inch into the sand. He tidied his clothes. He was still as clean as new. Not a single grain of sand was on him. It could be seen that he had dealt with this move with ease. Zhou cupped his fists and smiled faintly. "Thank you for your guidance, senior." After a while, the baby-like voice sounded again. "I haven't seen you for a few years and you've already cultivated to such a level. No wonder you're so arrogant. Senior, you're mistaken. In front of you, I don't dare to offend you at all." "How is this arrogant?" Zhou raised his eyebrows slightly, but his tone was very sincere. Dugu Maobao snorted. Lan Shao couldn't help but interject. "Actually, it doesn't matter if you're insolent or not, but your face hasn't changed much. It's still as annoying as before." His voice sounded sour. Diwu Zhangzi couldn't help but say, "Lan Shao, can you have even one chance to see someone for the first time? Isn't that about their face?" Lan. Diwu Zhangzi thought to himself that he really had a problem. He actually hoped that Lan Shao could correct this problem. "Senior, you flatter me." Lan Shao was speechless. He was a little sad. "Damn it, there's actually a man who's more shameless and narcissistic than me in this world." He boasted that he had reached the peak in this aspect, but every time he met Zhou he was always one step behind. He would always return empty-handed and be angered half to death. Dugu Maobao couldn't help but say coldly, "Damn pervert, can't you stop for a while at your age? Is this the main point?" "The main point is the girl." Lan Shao was furious. "Who are you calling old?" "That's right, Big Bao, you still have to grow for a few hundred years before you can reach my waist." "Ah." Lan Zhao's voice stopped abruptly after a short and sharp cry. Zhou looked at the void in front of him and said, "It's been a few years. Seniors, you're not even willing to come out and meet me?" Dugu Maobao snorted coldly. "If the girl is here, we'll naturally come out to meet you. But you're the only one here now. Why do we have to go out?" Zhou's expression changed slightly. He rubbed his brows helplessly and found it funny. "It's still the same as before. Zhou, you're a smart person. You should know why we're looking for you this time." Dugu Maobao's voice sounded much more serious with a hint of coldness. "What's the matter with you, The moment he said that, the surrounding space seemed to have frozen. Xianxia froze and didn't dare to move. The surroundings were clearly hot, but at this moment, it felt bone-piercing cold. It was as if a wave of coldness was spreading from all directions. It looked at its master worriedly. Zhou's expression became much calmer. He didn't speak for a long time. Until Dugu Maobao and the rest thought that Zhou wasn't going to say anything, he finally spoke. "Originally, you and I had promised to visit you again, but a lot of things happened in the past few years, so we haven't been able to come. Please forgive us, seniors." Zhou's tone was very calm, as if he was talking about something unrelated. But if one listened carefully, they would realize that under the seemingly calm sea, there were endless waves surging, as if this peace would be broken at any time. After a moment of silence, Lan Shao couldn't help but ask, "Then, what the hell is going on? This Zhou was really too much. How could he only say half of what he wanted to say?" Zhou paused. "Please forgive me for not being able to tell you what exactly happened now. When you see her in the future, it'll be more appropriate for you to ask her." "Why, you're not going to say it clearly?" Lan Shao was a little surprised. Diwu Zhangzi couldn't help but say, "There's no difference whether you or you say it. Can't you just say it now?" The two of them were very close. Wasn't it the same no matter who said it? Zhou shook his head. Although he was tactful, he was very determined. It's indeed better for her to say some things. There were too many things involved. It might not be a good thing to let them all know now. Besides, there were a lot of things that even she didn't know about. Seeing how determined Wuxia was, the few of them knew that they wouldn't be able to get anything out of him. Lan Xiao snorted. If you don't want to say it, then don't say it. Anyway, we'll be able to see her soon. When the time came, he would definitely ask everything clearly. Big Bao, don't help him tame his beasts anymore. Let little Snow go back with him. We'll wait here for her to come out. Shui, who had been forgotten, was filled with tears again. Can I finally escape from this sea of suffering? Wuxia said seriously. Thank you seniors for taking care of Shui. However, I'll continue to stay here for a period of time. So, it'll be good for Shui to accompany you here. Is that okay? Shui looked at its master in disbelief as if it couldn't believe that he actually dared to sell it in front of them. Dugumabao said, it's fine if it stays. It's also fine if you don't want to say it. However, I have one last question. Were you the one who changed Yuer's body? Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Chapter 790. Chu Luiyue, who was trapped underground, was completely unaware of the changes in the outside world. She didn't even notice Wuxia's arrival. In the dark space, Chu Luiyue and the two Tian baby had already exchanged a few blows and were now in a stalemate. The thick and heavy space was the two Tian baby's divine domain, and it could basically control everything in here. As for Chu Luiyue, every move she made here was extremely laborious. When she used the same move, the origin power she consumed here was at least 2 or 3 times more than what she normally consumed outside. If it was someone else, they might not be able to hold on. But Chu Luiyue was different. She had too much origin power stored in her body, and now that she had broken through to the middle of the 5th rank, her control over origin power was much stronger than before. Naturally, she could use it more freely. She held the long yuan sword tightly with both hands, looked at the two Tian baby opposite her and muttered in a low voice. It seems that something happened outside. In this duel she was actually at a disadvantage. But just now, for some unknown reason, the two Tian baby had undergone a slight change. The thin layer of frost that surrounded it had actually gradually disappeared. Following that, its strength had clearly weakened. Chu Luiyue had been with it for so long and was very familiar with everything about it. Naturally, she was also very sensitive to its changes. The two Tian babies' surrounding crystals had almost been completely devoured by her, so its remaining strength was actually not enough for it. It intermittently seized some energy from outside to fill its body, and used it to strengthen its own strength. It was also because of this that Chu Luiyue had been unable to completely take it down. It had an endless supply of energy supporting it, and it was extremely difficult to deal with it. Now that the layer of frost had dissipated, it didn't show any more signs of such a situation. This made Chu Luiyue suspect that something had happened outside. But no matter what, this was good for her. She raised her sword again and pointed it at the two Tian baby. Now, are you still not willing to obediently admit defeat? A vigorous aura suddenly erupted from the two Tian baby. Chu Luiyue sent out her sword. Long Yuan sword. The sharp and cold sword light flickered, and on the sword blade, 2 types of flames intersected. It emitted a terrifying pressure. This place had been completely sealed, so Chu Luiyue wasn't worried that someone would suddenly break in. Thus, she used her trump card the moment she attacked. The sound of the sword. The flames burned fiercely. Like 2 huge illusions, they surrounded the two Tian baby. The space around the Tian baby began collapsing again. Following that, the surrounding flames were also swallowed. Annihilation in the space's space. But she still, the flames the Tian baby, this the two Tian baby. Was as these 2 flames, one was formed by the water droplets force, while the other was taken from the heavenly square cauldron. If someone was here at this moment and saw that the two Tian baby was being forced into such a state by a stage 5 warrior like Chu Luiyue, their jaws would definitely drop. Seeing that the situation wasn't good, the two Tian baby moved and suddenly dodged upwards. However, the 2 flames followed closely behind and soon surrounded the heaven-wrecking holy seed. The long yuan sword chi finally arrived. Then it fiercely fell. Bang! The 2 balls of energy collided. Rumble! Crazy aftershocks swept out in all directions. Violent sounds rang out continuously. A crack suddenly appeared on the ground. Chu Liyue's pupils shrank. Then she saw that the faint layer of light outside also began to sway. The space of the divine realm began to compress toward Chu Liyue. Chu Liyue's body began to ache as if there was a heavy object pressing down on her, and the force in her force slowed down again. Chu Liyue's gaze was fixed on the 2 Tian baby in front of her, but she realized that the 2 balls of flame seemed to be greatly affected, and the flames became much smaller. She was shocked. Could this be the 2 Tian baby's true power? Just as this thought flashed through her mind, the 2 Tian baby suddenly glowed. Taizu suddenly shouted in a deep voice, "Lu Yu, retreat." Upon hearing this, Chu Liyue immediately went on her toes and rapidly moved backward without thinking. At the same time she raised the black shield in front of her. Boom, boom. The continuous and ferocious attacks caused Chu Liyue's hand, which was holding onto the black shield, to crack. Although the black shield blocked most of the impact, a small part of the force was transmitted to Chu Liyue's body through the black shield. In an instant the blood in her chest and abdomen surged and her lips turned pale. The heaven-wrecking holy seed was indeed much stronger than he had expected. Chu Liyue pursed her lips and quickly glanced at the 2 Tian baby, only to see that the light on it was even brighter. This power was clearly stored in its own body. In the next moment the 2 Tian baby flew toward Chu Liyue. It was as if there was a layer of invisible barrier around it, blocking all the sword energy and flames outside. Wherever it passed it left behind a black spatial crack. Chu Liyue felt a chill run down her spine, and her mind was constantly thinking of ways to deal with it. Soon the heaven-wrecking holy seed arrived not far from her. For some reason Chu Liyue felt a trace of ridicule and anger. In the next moment, a cold wind suddenly attacked her from behind. Chu Liyue was startled. She looked back. The same heaven-wrecking holy seed had appeared behind her at some point in time. It was flying straight toward Chu Liyue's dantian. It seemed that it was going to take the power in her body. Crack. A crack suddenly appeared on the pure gold armor. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 791. This 2 Tian baby is a twin. The Taizu was shocked and angry at the same time. Chu Liyue's heart skipped a beat. Twin. Didn't that mean that there were indeed 2 Tian babies here? She immediately turned her head to take a look and found that the 2 Tian baby that she had been fighting with earlier was still floating in the air. This was not an illusion. There were indeed 2 Tian babies, one in front of the other behind. Chu Liyue was stunned. Even though she had made all the preparations to deal with this 2 Tian baby, she did not expect that there were actually 2 twins. Dealing with one was already difficult enough, let alone 2. While Chu Liyue was in a daze, the 2 identical 2 Tian babies flew towards her. Chu Liyue felt as if her internal organs were being squeezed together by something, as if they would explode from her chest in the next moment. She gritted her teeth as countless thoughts flashed through her mind. She had to dodge. Once she was hit by this 2 Tian baby, the consequences would be unimaginable. However, the black shield could only block one of them. What about the other one? The pure gold armor had already cracked. She was no match for it at all. Screech. A clear chime could be heard all of a sudden. Chu Liyue only saw a red shadow flash before her eyes. Dumpling was already in front of her. Dumpling. Chu Liyue exclaimed. Even the pure gold armor could not block the power of the 2 Tian baby, let alone Dumpling's body of flesh and blood. Even a divine beast would not be able to block it. Dumpling flapped its wings. The crimson flames swept out in a frenzy, quickly condensing into a huge barrier in front of it. The 2 Tian baby quickly flew over. Flying. Almost effortlessly, it pierced through that layer of barrier. Bang. The sound of the barrier shattering could be heard. Chu Liyue was blocked behind Dumpling. Her line of sight was completely blocked and she could not see anything. However, she had heard that sound clearly. Tuan. Chu Liyue's heart skipped a beat at this moment. She hurriedly called for Dumpling. As long as Dumpling returned to her body, she could avoid this attack. However, Dumpling did not move. It was still firmly and stubbornly standing in front of her. Although they were in a contractual relationship, it was reasonable to say that all of Dumpling's actions had to be approved by Chu Liyue. If Chu Liyue summoned it, it would not be able to resist. However, because Tuanzi was now a divine beast, It had a certain degree of autonomy to a large extent. It was also because of this that it could continue blocking in front of Chu Liyue. Of course, it was also because all of this happened too quickly that no one could react in time. The sound of something piercing through flesh could be heard. It was dull and short. Chu Liyue's heart sank. She immediately looked up and saw that on Dumpling's left wing, there was a bloody hole the size of a fist. The Tian baby was actually very small. It was only the size of an adult's knuckle. It had 2 sharp ends and a slight bulge in the middle like a small shuttle. It was reasonable to say that the wound left by this thing would not be very big. However, in reality, because of the overbearing aura around it, when it pierced through something, the hole would often expand due to the terrifying power. At this moment, Dumpling was in such a state. In an instant, flesh and blood splattered everywhere. A few drops of warm blood splashed onto Chu Liyue's face. Before she could react, she saw the Tian baby flying towards her. Chu Liyue's eyes turned scarlet. "Were you the one who switched her body?" Hearing this, Rongxiu's eyebrows twitched slightly. The surroundings were incomparably quiet. They could even hear the sound of sand flowing slowly. The sun was blazing hot, but there was no wind at all. The surrounding air seemed to have become sticky and hot, as if it was difficult to breathe. Actually, Rongxiu had only paused for a short while, but to these people, it felt like an incomparably long period of time had passed. Rongxiu's thin lips parted slightly. Just as he was about to say something, his expression suddenly changed. He suddenly turned around and looked in the direction of the mystic forest. Her pure gold sacred armor was broken? He quickly said, "Seniors, something has happened in the mystic forest. I have to rush over immediately. Excuse me." After saying that, he lifted his feet and was about to rush forward. Wait. A cloud of yellow sand suddenly flew up and formed a fence in front of him, blocking his path. What happened over there? Tell me clearly. This was the voice of the Dugu Mabao. The 3 of them could only come out on the night of the crimson moon every month. The rest of the time they could only stay in this desert. However, they could more or less sense everything that happened in the entire Dahuang swamp. Everything was fine now. Why did Rongxiu suddenly want to leave? Rongxiu put on the silver mask and said concisely, "Her pure gold sacred armor is broken." What? Dugu Mabao was stunned for a moment and immediately denied it. That's impossible. Although that thing is quite powerful, it's impossible to break the pure gold sacred armor. They had specially studied that thing in the past. After confirming that it hadn't matured yet, they were relieved to let the girl deal with it alone. Rongxiu's voice seemed to be covered in a layer of frost. "I specially left a mark on the pure gold sacred armor. It's definitely not wrong." Hearing how certain Rongxiu's tone was, the few of them also felt a little uneasy. Diwu Zhangzi hurriedly said, "Then go quickly. You must protect her." Rongxiu nodded lightly and instantly disappeared. "Little snowflake, why aren't you following?" Lan Xiao added. Shui was originally worried about Tu Liyue. Hearing this, it was as if it had been granted amnesty. It raised its claws and instantly transformed into a bolt of lightning and rushed out. After the man and beast left, Lan Xiao couldn't help but say, "Seriously, if it weren't for the fact that we can't leave this godforsaken place, how could we not even be able to do such a small thing? This is great. We gave that kid another chance to be a hero and save the beauty. The most important thing is that the girl is fine. Who cares who saved her?" Diwu Zhangzi snorted and had a rare temper. "I'm just saying. But Big Bao, weren't you sure that that thing was fine? What's going on now?" Lan Xiao asked unhappily. Dugu Mabao fell silent and didn't speak for a long time. Lan Xiao snorted coldly. "If it's really because there's something wrong with that thing that made the girl hurt, without him and Diwu Zhangzi having to do anything, Big Bao would suffer to death. Let's see how you explain it to the girl later." After a long while, Dugu Mabao said slowly and firmly, "She'll be fine." Dong. The crisp and melodious sound of the collision echoed in the dark and cramped space. Chu Liyue stared in shock at the transparent square cauldron that suddenly appeared. It took her a while to react. Just now she was about to risk her life. In the end, her vision blurred, and this heavenly square cauldron appeared on its own and blocked her. Most importantly, he had really blocked the heaven-wrecking holy seed. That sound was produced by the collision between the two. The Tian baby actually bounced back after being hit by the counterattack. Chu Liyue was dumbfounded. Liu, your treasure is actually so powerful? Taizu's voice couldn't hide his excitement. Chu Luiyue heaved a sigh of relief in her heart. I didn't think. Her voice stopped abruptly. A sparkling and translucent white bone slowly floated out of the heavenly square cauldron. This collision had actually caused the great phoenix dragon's skeleton to be knocked out. Digression. After supper, everyone went to sleep. Tomorrow at midnight, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 792. Previously, Chu Luiyue had carefully kept this skeleton in the heavenly square cauldron because she was worried that the great phoenix dragon race would discover its aura and chase after it. She didn't expect that the two Tian babies' collision would directly shake the skeleton out. Chu Luiyue's heart suddenly trembled and she immediately put the skeleton back. Bang! The skeleton had just floated out of the cauldron when it was suppressed by Chu Luiyue. There was a collision echo from inside. Chu Luiyue was still in shock, and her eyes were fixed on the heavenly square cauldron. This time the skeleton didn't come out again. But thinking of what had just happened, Chu Luiyue still felt a little uneasy. In that instant that piece of bone was completely exposed. Would the great phoenix dragon race sense it? Yes. The legendary three-eyed eagle's indifferent voice sounded in her heart. Chu Luiyue was shocked. Really? The great phoenix dragon bloodline is one of the two strongest races in the world. They are extremely sensitive to their own race. Even if they are thousands of miles away, they can still sense evil intentions without any hindrance. The legendary three-eyed eagle's tone was much more serious. Previously, with the long yuan sword and the heavenly square cauldron suppressing it, this thing's aura didn't spread. But just now, Chu Luiyue's heart slowly sank. Originally, she still had a trace of hope, but the current situation was probably dangerous. Then what can we do? Chu Luiyue asked with a headache. She knew that she was no match for existences like the great phoenix dragon. The legendary three-eyed eagle fell silent. Taizu suddenly said, actually, it's not that there's no way. If the great phoenix dragon race comes, they will definitely ask for this skeleton back. Liu, why don't you use this skeleton on the legendary three-eyed eagle as soon as possible? This way they won't be able to compete with you. Chu Luiyue was stunned. Did Taizu mean that she should help the legendary three-eyed eagle reconstruct its body now? This is indeed a solution, but Taizu still lacks the herbs needed to reconstruct its body. Taizu coughed. I remember that you already have the purple gold Bodhi leaf, right? This was enough. There should be some among the remaining long yuan swords. What? For a moment, Chu Luiyue thought that he was hallucinating. What do you think is inside the long yuan sword? Taizu paused for a moment, his voice drifting. It's those herbs that can help divine beasts reconstruct their bodies. I remember that there are still some left. However, it's mainly because you already have the purple gold Bodhi leaf. That's the most important thing. The hilt of the long yuan sword was a huge space. There were many treasures and riches that the Taizu had brought out from the Tianling god realm. Because there were too many of them, even Chu Luiyue didn't fully understand what was inside. Now that she heard from Taizu, she realized that there were even such things. Blood cloud divine crystal? Yes. Ink essence bamboo? Yes. Heavenly spirit true fruit? I think so too. The corners of Chu Luiyue's eyes twitched violently. Taizu felt guilty and hurriedly explained. Actually, this matter is complicated. I intentionally found these things back then. Although I used some of them, there's still a lot left. Anyway, it's definitely enough for you to use. I didn't think of this matter at first. After all, there are too many things. I didn't tell you at first because I wanted to give you more opportunities to train. Taizu meant what he said. At first, he really didn't think of the existence of these things. It was only when he saw Chu Luiyue retrieve the purple gold Bodhi leaf that he finally remembered. But at that time, Chu Luiyue and the legendary three-eyed eagle weren't very anxious about this matter, so he didn't mention it. He wanted to let her find it first and gain more experience. In the end, if she really didn't find anything, he would take it out. He didn't expect to encounter today's situation. Liu, are you angry with me? Taizu asked nervously. Chu Luiyue didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Taizu, why would I be angry with you? I can't thank you enough for helping me like this. It was just that this matter came too suddenly. She didn't expect it for a moment, so she was so shocked. Speaking of which, these things were Taizu's after all, and he had no obligation to give them to her. Now that her urgent need could be solved, she was indeed full of joy. However, judging from Taizu's words, he used to have a lot of these things. Even if he needed them for himself, he didn't need to leave so many behind. A trace of doubt flashed through Chu Liuyue's mind. But the situation was urgent at this time, so she couldn't ask in detail. She could only suppress the confusion in her heart. Bang! Another crashing sound was heard. Chu Liyue immediately looked back. This time it was the other one that struck the black shield. What made Chu Liyue feel lucky was that this collision didn't leave any marks on the black shield. It was much better than the broken pure gold armor. Chu Liyue's eyes narrowed slightly. This black shield was indeed of a higher level than the pure gold armor, and its defense was stronger. Her heart calmed down a little and she looked at the other one. She could completely leave her back to the black shield. Now she just needed to deal with this one. Her gaze fell on the heavenly square cauldron. With a thought, the transparent square cauldron slowly rotated and flew forward. The two Tian baby seemed to feel a threat and began to retreat. Chu Liyue was delighted. The heavenly square cauldron seemed to be able to deal with this thing. The two Tian baby suddenly rushed forward. Chu Liyue looked up. Then she saw the other two Tian baby flying over. The two heaven-wrecking holy seeds were about to collide. Liu stopped them. Once the two twins merge, it will be even more difficult to deal with. Taizu shouted in a deep voice. Chu Liyue directly swung the long yuan sword. A biting cold sword light flashed. It flew between the two Tian babies. At the same time, the heavenly square cauldron slowly flew toward one of them. A transparent tongue of flame shot out from it. In just an instant, one of the two Tian babies was swept away by the transparent flame and then disappeared into the heavenly square cauldron. From the beginning to the end, everything was smooth and natural without the slightest pause. It was as if the two Tian baby was just an ordinary toy. Even Chu Liyue was secretly shocked. She thought that the heavenly square cauldron should be able to deal with the two Tian baby, but she didn't expect it to be so easy. In the next second, the second heavenly square cauldron was swallowed by the second flame. From beginning to end, only a few breaths of time had passed. The heavenly square cauldron quickly shrank and fell back into Chu Liyue's hands. Chu Liyue carefully looked at the small transparent square cauldron in her palm. Looking at it, she could vaguely see the skeleton of the great phoenix dragon and the two Tian babies inside. However, the two babies were separated, each occupying one side. Chu Liyue blinked and couldn't believe that the two Tian baby was subdued so easily. Taizu suddenly asked, "What's the origin of the two Tian baby? What is the origin of this square cauldron of yours?" A better reading experience came from the Love Network. Chapter 793. Chu Liyue shook her head. "I got it when I met the legendary three-eyed eagle, but I don't know what it is." She had asked the legendary three-eyed eagle before, but it didn't seem to be willing to say much. It only said that it was a sacred object. It was such a vague answer that it was as good as not saying anything. Chu Liyue knew that she wouldn't be able to get anything out of it for the time being, so she put this matter aside for the time being. As time passed, she also realized that this thing seemed to be more mysterious than she had guessed. Whether it was the great phoenix dragon skeleton or the two Tian babies, it could easily swallow them and completely suppress their power. It was terrifying. Taizu couldn't help but say, "It's not an exaggeration to say that your luck is heaven-defying." First it was the black pyramid, then the water droplet, and finally this transparent square cauldron. Even the black shield was somewhat unfathomable. Even the dragon abyss sword paled in comparison to these treasures. Any one of these things would probably cause countless people to go crazy over it. And Chu Liyue actually had so many. There was no lack of geniuses in this world, but there were very few who could grow from geniuses to true experts. To become one of these people, talent and hard work were indispensable, but there was also one thing that was extremely important: luck. And Chu Liyue had all of them. Others might not be able to encounter such a great opportunity even once in their lifetime, but she kept encountering it one after another. If someone like her couldn't become a top expert, it would be too unreasonable. Chu Liyue's lips curled up. Actually, I didn't expect this thing to be so powerful. However, this matter was finally resolved. The stone hanging in her heart finally fell to the ground. She let out a long breath and looked around. The space was cracking bit by bit. Cracks began to appear on the layer of faint green light. She had already put away the two Tian baby, so the divine territory it displayed naturally dissipated along with it. Soon it turned into streams of light and disappeared, dimming bit by bit. The pressure on Chu Liyue's body also gradually lessened. She looked at the heavenly square cauldron again with a solemn expression. She couldn't go out yet. The matter of the great phoenix dragon skeleton had not been resolved yet. Since he had everything, he might as well help the legendary three-eyed eagle reconstruct its body. With this thought in mind, Chu Liyue said, "Taizu, may I trouble you to help me set up the barrier first?" The great ancestor knew what she was planning to do and immediately attacked without saying a word. A translucent barrier quickly appeared. Silver lightning could be vaguely seen swimming on it. Taizu had used a lot of Tianlei in the past, so he had fused a part of Tianlei's power into his own power. After isolating this space, Chu Liyue felt slightly more at ease. She threw the heavenly square cauldron out, and it quickly returned to its normal size and landed on the ground silently. Dumpling. She summoned Dumpling back first. Tuanzi turned into a small one and went back to her shoulder, leaning on her shoulder with grievance and pitifulness. One of its wings drooped and was dripping with blood. The wound was a shocking sight. When Dumpling was still in the form of a blood ferret, it had always been very sturdy. Although it had been injured before, it rarely looked like this. Now that it had just become a divine beast, it had suffered such a serious injury. Chu Liyue's heart ached when she saw it. She carefully cleaned its wound, took out medicine and bandaged it. Then she pretended to be angry. "Have you learned your lesson? Let's see if you dare to be so disobedient next time." Tuanzi whimpered and looked at her pitifully with a pair of magnificent eyes. It was so dangerous at that time. How could it avoid it? Even if there was only a 1 in 10,000 chance that she would be injured, it would still block in front of her without hesitation. After waiting for so long, they finally met again. How could it bear to let her bear the danger? Back then she had directly sent it out in order to save its life. In the end, seeing Dumpling's sad and pitiful eyes, Chu Liyue's heart softened. Okay, I won't scold you anymore. Go back and recuperate first, okay?" Dumpling nodded. Its figure flashed and returned to Chu Liyue's body to recuperate. In fact, divine beasts had strong self-healing abilities. This kind of injury could be healed in a short time. Chu Liyue took a deep breath and looked at the heavenly square cauldron. A huge black phantom suddenly appeared in front of her. Whoosh, its wings flapped. Its momentum was astonishing. It was the legendary three-eyed eagle. Compared to before, its phantom seemed to be more solid. Chu Liyue looked at its eyes steadily. "Are you ready?" The legendary three-eyed eagle's usually indifferent eyes finally revealed a glimmer of excitement. Even if it was cold and indifferent, it couldn't help but feel emotional at this time. It had been suppressed for thousands of years and was tortured in pain every day and night in the heavenly square cauldron. It almost couldn't take it anymore. It had imagined the scene of reconstructing its physical body countless times, but even it didn't have much hope and just treated it as a fantasy. Those who could do this in the world were all top-notch figures. How could Chu Liyue do it alone? However, it didn't expect this day to really come and so soon. Chu Liyue asked, "I'm ready." "I'm ready. How about you?" The legendary three-eyed eagle nodded lightly. Chu Liyue pursed his lips slightly. "Then I'll start." When the two Tian baby was kept in the heavenly square cauldron by Chu Liyue and the realm of the gods completely collapsed, the mystic forest outside was peaceful. In the quiet forest, a light breeze blew. Qin Yi was originally sitting cross-legged with his eyes closed to rest, but when he heard this movement he suddenly opened his eyes. In his long and narrow eyes, a glimmer of light flashed quickly. There seemed to be some movement just now. He had set up an inescapable net in this forest so he could sense any changes in the mystic forest. However, after sensing for a while he didn't discover anything. Seemed like it was just an illusion just now. Qin Yi knitted his brows and stood up. The few people at the side looked over. Lei Laosi asked, "Big brother, what's the matter?" Qin Yi shook his head. "Nothing. I'll go ahead and take a look." As he spoke, he walked towards the mother tree. The surroundings were quiet, and there didn't seem to be any changes around the mother tree. However, Qin Yi knitted his brows even tighter. I shouldn't be hallucinating. Or. A roar suddenly came from above. Everyone raised their heads in unison and saw a muscular figure flying over at high speed. Lei Laosi exclaimed. It's the legendary fiend that roared just now. Qin Yi squinted his eyes. Could it be that it caused that movement? In the dim space, a black figure flitted past quickly. Very quickly, Rong Xiu saw that familiar figure below. However, it seems like she's fine. Chu Liwei seemed to have sensed something and suddenly looked up. The two of them met each other's eyes and looked into each other's eyes. Chu Liu's heart suddenly skipped a beat. Digression. Update at 6 p.m. Mobile users please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from AI Network. Chapter 794. This pair of eyes actually gave her a very familiar feeling, as if she had seen them somewhere before. At first glance they were as deep as the night sky with some kind of fatal attraction. Chu Liwei opened her mouth and a name seemed to be about to slip out of her mouth. You, however, at this moment the man calmly turned his gaze away. There seemed to be a faint layer of mist in the depths of his eyes, covering those soul-stirring eyes. Chu Liwei suddenly came back to her senses and carefully sized up the person who had come. This was a mysterious man wearing a black brocade robe and a silver-white mask on his face. He was suspended in midair looking down at her. Because he was completely black and had no extra accessories, he almost merged with the dark space behind him. She could barely make out that his figure was very tall. As for the rest, she couldn't see anything. Chu Liwei stared at him for a while and suddenly blurted out, "First Master?" After a short silence, the man finally spoke, his voice low and lazy. "You have good eyesight." It was indeed him. Chu Liwei was actually shocked. She had never seen this person with her own eyes, but she had heard his voice last time in Yao Chen's Imperial Mausoleum. Now that she saw him, she didn't know why, but she felt that this person gave her a similar feeling to the First Master that day. She had just asked tentatively, but she didn't expect to guess correctly. Chu Liwei blinked and carefully sized him up again. Unfortunately, the surroundings were dark and she couldn't see anything clearly. He was also wearing a mask, so she couldn't see anything at all. However, she quickly restrained herself. In the face of such a person, this kind of gaze was inevitably a little offensive. After all, this was the first time they had officially met. Chu Liwei retracted her gaze and glanced at the legendary three-eyed eagle and the heavenly square cauldron in front of her. Before this person came, she had just prepared to help the legendary three-eyed eagle reconstruct its physical body. She hadn't done much, but he had appeared. Through this translucent barrier set up by Taizu, he should be able to roughly see the situation around her. If it had been someone else, Chu Liwei would have immediately put all these things away. Anyone with a bit of eyesight would be able to tell that the legendary three-eyed eagle beside her was not an ordinary magical beast. However, this person had a mysterious background and a powerful background. Chu Liwei believed that he would definitely recognize the legendary three-eyed eagle. As for the heavenly square cauldron, although there was nothing special about it at first glance, there was no guarantee that he would know about it. Chu Liwei was well aware of the principle of treasuring a jade ring becomes a crime. However, the strange thing was that after recognizing that it was the First Master, she actually heaved a sigh of relief in her heart. She didn't know why, but she was certain that he wouldn't steal her things. This feeling came out of nowhere, but that was what Chu Liwei thought. Chu Liwei didn't try to hide it, even though this person could easily snatch her things away. Since he had already seen it, there was no point in hiding it anymore. If he really wanted something from her, why did he leave the Black Pyramid to her? Thinking of this, Chu Liu's heart moved. She bowed to the other party seriously. "I have to thank the First Master for the previous matter." The other party had helped her many times in the open and in the dark, so it was only right for her to thank him. However, the other party didn't respond to her words. Instead, he asked, "Are you planning to help the legendary three-eyed eagle reconstruct its physical body?" Chu Liu's eyelids twitched. He really saw through it at a glance. She was secretly glad that she didn't think of deceiving the other party. She nodded and admitted frankly, "Yes. A fifth-rank warrior trying to help a mythological beast reconstruct its physical body. If this were to spread out, it would attract ridicule and disapproval from many people." However, the First Master just nodded gently and didn't comment on it at all. Instead he changed the topic and asked seemingly unintentionally, "This place should have been quite lively just now." The man's tone was lazy with a bit of carelessness. Chu Luiyue didn't care. The fight between her and the two Tian baby was indeed quite loud and left a lot of traces in the surroundings. She paused for a moment and asked tentatively, "First Master, I have something to ask you. Do you know what was in the pyramid that was obtained in the Imperial Mausoleum?" After Chu Luiyue asked, she nervously held her breath. This man must know something. Otherwise he wouldn't have left a seal on it for no reason. But what was it? Chu Luiyue thought for a long time but still couldn't figure it out. Now that she happened to see him, she naturally had to ask him. As the voice fell, the surroundings fell into silence. Chu Luiyue's heart seemed to be gradually clenched by something. Suddenly the man swept down from above. Chu Luiyue didn't see his movements clearly and saw that he had already appeared not far in front of her. The space at the bottom wasn't small. The enchantment that Taizu helped Chu Luiyue only occupied about half of the space here. Reconstructing the physical body was originally a meticulous and long-term work. In order to successfully complete it, one must try to avoid external interference as much as possible. However, there weren't many requirements for the size of the space. The man jumped down and landed on the other half of the empty ground. He stood in the dark and Chu Luiyue could only see his deep and quiet eyes. He seemed to chuckle softly. "If I tell you now, then why did I leave the seal?" "Chu Luiyue, it seems that the first master is unwilling to say." Actually, this was also expected. It would be strange if it was really so easy to find out. Just as he said, then there was no point in leaving the seal. If it's not convenient for the first master to tell me, it's fine. But this thing seems to be very important to you, so why did you leave it here? This was also a question that Chu Luiyue couldn't figure out. With his strength, wouldn't it be a piece of cake for him to deal with this thing? "I have my own reasons," the man said lightly, obviously not intending to explain. Chu Luiyue frowned slightly. This feeling of not knowing anything was really uncomfortable. Her tone also became cold. "Since it's not convenient for the first master to say anything, then I won't ask anymore." If he didn't say anything, then so be it. Perhaps one day she would be able to unlock that layer of the seal and secretly find out what was inside. "If there's nothing else, first master, please help yourself. I still have things to do, so I won't say much." With that, Chu Luiyue turned around, intending to start reconstructing the legendary three-eyed eagle's physical body. She didn't mind this person watching. Anyway, no matter what, she would do what she had to do. However, at this moment the man spoke again. "Wait." Chu Luiyue stopped what she was doing and turned to look at him. "First master, do you have anything else to say?" There was a hint of a smile in the man's voice. "You helped me guard this thing. As a reward, I will also do you a favor. Do you want to take off the armor on your body yourself, or do you want me to help you?" Chapter 795. Pure gold armor? Chu Luiyue lowered her head and glanced at it. Just now, the two Tian baby had broken through the pure gold armor and left an inch-long crack on it. What did he mean? "Your armor is not bad. If it's damaged, its defense will be greatly reduced. It's really a pity." Hearing this, Chu Luiyue asked with some uncertainty, "Are you planning to help me repair this armor?" The other party nodded slightly. "You don't trust me?" Chu Luiyue shook her head. "That's not it. If you can help me, I don't know how to thank you." Previously, she had been worried about the damage to the pure gold armor. Generally speaking, if a yuan instrument was damaged, its effect would be greatly reduced. Most ordinary yuan instruments would be thrown away directly, while the higher grade ones would be repaired as much as possible. And this had high requirements for the person who repaired it. Very few people could do it perfectly. Therefore, the final result was usually barely satisfactory. Chu Luiyue didn't expect that he would take the initiative to help. Judging from his strength, he might be an expert in this aspect. Chu Luiyue hesitated for a moment before agreeing. Based on her current level, she couldn't completely repair the pure gold armor. She might as well let him give it a try. Anyway, the pure gold armor recognized its master. She wasn't worried that he would do anything. If he wanted to snatch something, he would have done it long ago. Why wait until now? Chu Luiyue had a thought, and a layer of faint golden light appeared on her body. Then this light flew out and condensed into the shape of an armor in front of her. She waved her sleeve and sent the pure gold armor out. That man raised his hand, and the pure gold armor obediently landed in his hand. Rong Xiu looked at the pure gold armor in his hand and sighed. He wanted to help his wife, but he had to find such a dignified reason. It was tiring. He only took a glance and immediately saw the damaged part of the pure gold armor. He couldn't be more familiar with this thing. Back then, in order to help her refine those glass barriers, he had done a lot of research. However, he still had to go through the formalities. Chu Liyue watched as the other party held the pure gold armor in his hand. After examining it for a while, he prepared to make his move. A wisp of black origin power flew out from his palm and rapidly transformed into a cluster of flames. With a flick of his finger, the black flame flew to the damaged part of the pure gold armor and began to burn. This person seems to be extremely proficient in this Dao. Taizu's voice suddenly rang out. Chu Liyue had actually seen through this. After all, she had personally polished the Cloud Sky copper sword before. Around the black flame, the pure gold armor glowed faintly. Then it became much softer. Chu Liyue was secretly amazed. This person's control over the power of flames could be said to be peerless. The pure gold armor was hers, so she could naturally change its hardness according to her wishes. However, in the hands of others, it was usually just an ordinary piece of tough armor. This man does seem to know a lot about these things. Chu Liyue calmed down and stopped looking at it. He turned his attention back to the legendary three-eyed eagle. There was no time to waste. Even if someone was beside her, she couldn't care less. She took a deep breath and removed all distracting thoughts from her mind. Then a transparent karmic fire wrapped around the great phoenix dragon's skeleton and slowly floated out. After this period of tempering, the skeleton seemed to have become even more sparkling and translucent. At a glance, it looked like a top-grade jade. Chu Liyue held her breath and concentrated. A scarlet flame flew out of her hand. The two flames instantly intertwined. It burned fiercely. Soon, a faint trace of blood appeared in the skeleton. Chu Liyue's eyes lit up. That should be the bloodline power contained in the skeleton. As long as this power was completely stimulated, it could fuse with the legendary three-eyed eagle. Chu Liyue carefully controlled it. The two flames burned evenly. More and more traces of blood appeared in the skeleton. A faint pressure spread out from it. Buzz. The barrier was hit and let out a buzzing sound. Chu Liyue frowned. The bloodline power contained in the great phoenix dragon skeleton wouldn't break through this barrier, right? Wouldn't that be troublesome? Just as she was thinking about how to deal with it, a fluctuation suddenly came from the side. A layer of faint black enchantment covered the previous enchantment. The buzzing sound instantly disappeared. With two layers of barriers, the movements inside would not be transmitted to the outside. Chu Liyue looked sideways. "Thank you, First Master." However, the man only waved his hand lightly as if he didn't care. Chu Liyue pursed her lips. There seemed to be more and more mysteries about this person. However, she didn't dwell on it for long and quickly continued. With the support of this barrier, the surrounding space became much more stable. Chu Liyue's heart also became much more at ease. Rong Xiu's fingertips moved slightly. In the black flames, a golden light slowly flowed out, covering the inch-long damage on the pure gold sacred armor. His movements were very subtle. From Chu Liyue's side, it was absolutely impossible to see this scene. He calmly raised his eyes and glanced at his wife. She was concentrating on condensing the great phoenix dragon's skeleton. Rong Xiu narrowed his eyes slightly. She seemed to trust him too much, right? She actually dared to take out the great phoenix dragon's skeleton so ostentatiously? Wasn't she worried at all? Since when did she trust other men so much? Thinking of this, Rong Xiu's mood suddenly became a little bad. Digression. It's already February here, Cavan. I'll go and sort it out. There's still a little at night, about 10 o'clock. Everyone can look at it together tomorrow. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 796. Mystic Forest. A white lion was floating quietly in mid-air. Qin Yi and the rest looked up at it. After a while, Lei Laosi couldn't help but ask, "Big brother, what kind of fiend is this? Why is it staying up there all the time?" They originally thought that it was going to charge down, but it actually stopped there after circling around twice. It didn't leave or come down. This caused the few people below to be at a loss as to what to do. Qin also found it strange. Previously he felt that there was a commotion in the mystic forest and then this white lion appeared. When it stopped in midair, there wasn't any commotion in the surroundings. He could basically confirm that the commotion just now was caused by its arrival. However, he couldn't quite tell what kind of fiend it was and didn't know why it didn't do anything after coming here. However, judging from the current situation, it didn't seem to have any murderous intent, so it probably didn't come for them. Ignore it first. All right. It's a legendary fiend after all, so we have to be careful. Lei Laosi scratched his head and muttered, a fiend that looks like a legendary fiend. Why have I never heard of a divine beast that looks like a white lion? When Yi Ranran heard this, he couldn't help but say, Big Brother Lei, is that a white lion? Its body seems to be yellow. Xue Xue, who was blocked outside by its master, was filled with resentment. It couldn't advance or retreat and secretly thought that its life was tough. When it heard this, its heart instantly trembled and it couldn't wait to run away immediately. How embarrassing! Its originally perfect snow-colored fur was now stained with countless layers of yellow sand and became a dirty yellow color. Xue Xue roared resentfully. Roar! The forest shook instantly. However, the few people below weren't affected much. Yi Ranran was shocked and tugged at Mu Hongyu's sleeves. Hongyu, why do I feel like it's angry at me just now? It was originally a white lion and it came from the Red Moon Desert, which is why it became like this. It definitely heard what you said just now, so it's naturally unhappy. Qin Yi turned around and explained. Don't forget that legendary fiends have almost the same level of intelligence as humans. Yi Ranran shrank back. So even divine beasts care about such words. Mu Hongyu gently patted her shoulder. Don't worry, Ranran. I don't think it has any ill intentions towards us. Although it roared, none of them were affected by this power. It could be seen that it had deliberately avoided it. Only then did Yi Ranran feel relieved. Suddenly Chang Wanzhou stood up. His movements were very fast and even a little hurried, which immediately attracted the attention of a few people. Qin Yi seemed to have predicted something. What's the situation? Chang Wanzhou's eyes seemed to sparkle. I think she should be coming out soon. The West Hill. Imperial Palace, Huayang Palace. Shengguanwan was leaning against the bed. Chan Yi was kneeling beside her, feeding her medicine. Your Highness, this is the last decoction for today. Please drink it. As Chan Yi spoke, she carefully scooped a little with a spoon and brought it to Shengguanwan's lips. Shengguanwan's lips were pale as she weakly drank the medicine. The moment she took a sip, her slender brows immediately knitted tightly together. The bitter and fishy taste rushed straight at her, almost choking her. She forced herself to swallow this mouthful of medicine. Her stomach churned again and she almost spat it out. But in the end she still forced herself to swallow it. Chan Yi didn't dare to say anything else and continued to feed her medicine carefully. By the time Chan Yi finished feeding her this bowl, a thin layer of sweat had already formed on her forehead. She hurriedly put the things away and smiled pleasingly. Physicians was said that your body has already taken a turn for the better. After you use this medicine today, you'll have to change the dressing tomorrow. As long as you rest well, your body will definitely recover as soon as possible. When Shengguanwan heard this, she seemed to be unmoved. Gradually, a hint of mockery appeared in her eyes. She slowly touched her face and asked softly, "What did he say? Then did he say when the scars on this consort's face would heal?" Chan Yi lowered her eyes. Physicians was said that the scars on your face are a little troublesome and that you need more time. Shengguanwan sneered. Do you really think this consort is stupid? Chan Yi paused. Your Highness, you're very fortunate. You'll definitely have a way. You may leave. Shengguanwan was already tired of hearing this kind of argument, so she waved her hand in annoyance. Chan Yi could only take her leave. Then this servant will stand guard outside. If there's anything you need, feel free to tell this servant. After saying that, she respectfully left. The moment the door closed, Shengguanwan's expression instantly turned cold and resentful. Actually, her face was covered in scars right now, so she couldn't make any sort of expression. She also didn't dare to move carelessly for fear of tearing open the scabs on her face again. She could only vent all her emotions through her eyes. In the past few days after returning to Western Tomb, she had been living a life worse than death. That day after that torment her vitality had been greatly damaged, so she could only lie in bed to recuperate. She had used up a lot of her origin power, but fortunately her Yuan meridian hadn't been damaged. This made Shangwanwan feel a little better. But in the end she discovered something even worse. The scars on her face seemed to be much more serious than normal wounds. No matter what method she used or what medicine she tried, there didn't seem to be any obvious effects. Every time she thought it was going to heal, it would mysteriously fester again. This happened over and over again. Her face was already completely unrecognizable. As a result, she could only hide here and not come out to meet anyone. Shangwanwan was both angry and afraid. If her face really couldn't heal, what would she do in the future? She could still delay it for now, but she would definitely have to come out in the future. Especially since her wedding with Jiang Yuqing was getting closer and closer. On the day of the wedding she still had to meet all the civil and military officials. Knock knock. A somewhat hurried knocking sound suddenly came from the door. Your Highness, this servant has something to report. What could happen at this time? Shangwanwan frowned. Come in. Chani pushed the door open and walked in quickly. Her expression was a little strange. Just as she walked to Shangwanwan's bed, she directly knelt down. Your Highness, the prince consort and the others are back. Shangwanwan was shocked. How could they be so fast? How long had it been? Not even half a month, right? Could it be that they had retrieved the dancing lotus so smoothly? Where are they now? I heard that the prince consort was injured and has returned to the Jiang residence to recuperate. The others are waiting for you in Minghua Palace. Shangwanwan's heart sank and she quickly asked, has the dancing lotus been retrieved? Digression. Good night, everyone. Tomorrow at 12 o'clock, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. You're tuning in to the Zhou Xian's Legacy YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.